Welcome everyone to the 2022 Thomas Paine celebration. My name is Emily Newman. I am the Senior Education Coordinator for the American Humanist Association. We are pleased to provide the online technical service for this event, and it's my pleasure to be the Zoom coordinator and co-host for today's event. Before we begin, I have just a few housekeeping items to convey. This session is being recorded to also be viewed on social media. For the best viewing, we recommend that you put your Zoom settings on speaker view, and we will be sure to spotlight those that are speaking at their time. That way you'll see the speakers in the best and biggest Zoom box possible. Everyone except the hosts and the speakers will be muted. You can type questions through the Zoom chat function, and I'll happily represent you by repeating your question or commentary. Just type a question or commentary in the chat. If we do not get to your question, someone will get back to you after this event. Again, my name is Emily Newman, and I'd like to let you know about the first formal gathering to celebrate the birth of Thomas Paine took place in 1825, 16 years after his death. Thomas Paine enthusiasts met in New York City on January 29th. Celebrating the birth date of Thomas Paine became a regular occurrence across the country. The following year, celebrations took place in Boston, Massachusetts, Cincinnati, Ohio, and Rochester, New York. The first celebrations were hosted by both labor groups and freethought groups. Like Thomas Paine, the celebrations ran counter to a culture of racism, religious fanaticism, and suppressed speech. In 1925, the birthday celebrations became sporadic, but in the late 1990s, the interest to celebrate was revived, perhaps due to promotion of Thomas Paine's legacy by the Freethought community. Today, the newly formed Thomas Paine Memorial Association and co-sponsors are proud to host the very first Thomas Paine birthday celebration using Zoom. We're starting this event with a very special announcement from Todd Stiefel, the founder and president of the Stiefel Freethought Foundation. Welcome, Todd. Just gotta make sure you unmute so we can all hear. There you go. Thank you.
I was being blocked by the hand of God. All right. So thank you, everybody. I'm excited to be here today. Thank you, everybody, for joining in. First thing I'm here to announce is that my foundation, the Stiefel Freethought Foundation, is sponsoring a tripling matching challenge. So anybody who donates today will have their donation tripled. In effect, that means if you donate 100, my foundation will donate 200, and that equals 300. Triple, yeah. There you go. Math for the win. So hopefully everybody will donate. We'll raise a lot of money and get this statue built. Some have asked why I am doing this, and the answer is twofold. The first is because Margaret has been very passionate about this for a long time, and I love Margaret, and I think she's awesome. So I really want to help and support what she's working on. And two, because frankly, there's no better person to honor than Thomas Paine when it comes to the intersections of reason and freedom. As of the news every day, we're seeing reason under attack, whether it's completely silly things like we find ourselves in a world where vaccines are controversial, or we see misinformation spread constantly and people really unable to decipher what is true versus what's not true. We're also seeing attacks on freedom that I frankly never thought I'd see in my lifetime in this country. I mean, what we're seeing here is akin to what I've witnessed in third world countries. We saw an attack on our capital from people who wanted to overthrow the government, and we're seeing the groundwork laid right now to use the excuse of a fake election to actually have a fake election. The groundwork is being laid to overturn the next one. So I think in this time of where freedom and reason really need to be promoted and pushed to the spotlight as a country to really, frankly, help save America, Thomas Paine is no better person to honor. So let's get this statue built, folks. And with that, I'd like to turn it back over to Emily.
Thank you, Todd. Margaret Downey, the president of the Thomas Paine Memorial Association, would like to say a few words.
Yes. Thank you, Todd, for this wonderful fundraising opportunity. Your triple match offer adds a lot of excitement to the Thomas Paine birthday celebration. On behalf of the entire board of the Thomas Paine Memorial Association, please accept our heartfelt gratitude. The Thomas Paine Statue Project is greatly advanced with your tremendous generosity, and we simply cannot thank you enough. To donate, please go to the link you see on the screen or send us a check with today's date on it. Audience members, please don't miss this opportunity to triple your donation. Now, let's meet the board of directors for the Thomas Paine Memorial Association as they welcome you to this celebration recognizing the birth date of Thomas Paine and honoring his legacy.
When I was asked to say a few words about Thomas Paine, I realized I didn't know very much about him, other than what I had picked up in middle school, along with snatches about the Declaration of Independence, Valley Forge, and the Liberty Bell. Frankly, for a school kid, Thomas Paine didn't have the same appeal as the Boston Tea Party or the Midnight Ride of Paul Revere. But now that I'm older, I've come to understand that muskets, redcoats, and crossing the Delaware, while standing up in a rowboat no less, does not a revolution make. Revolutions start with ideas, and Tom Paine was a wellspring. Interestingly, his ideas are as explosive today as they were 200 years ago. That's why we're honoring him. Paine put into words the sentiments of freedom-loving people everywhere. He was so influential that he not only helped birth the American Revolution, but from a prison cell in Paris, he gave spark to the French Revolution as well. And while today many of us think of Thomas Paine as that old, esteemed, venerated father of the American Revolution, I got to wondering, what would he be like at a dinner party? After all, in polite society, a dinner party is where many an idea gets first airing. Except, by all accounts, Thomas Paine was anything but polite. It was a brave hostess who invited Tom over for dinner on Saturday night. Tom Paine was an irascible guy. Fractious, cantankerous, and testy are some colorful descriptions. I have no doubt that by the end of dinner, after bluntly expressing his opinions and challenging yours on his favorite subjects of morality, religion, politics, God, and the three food groups, every person at that dinner party would have had reason to be offended. Why, he even wrote a letter to George Washington accusing him of being a hypocrite and an incompetent general. Good old George Washington, no less. Yet in the blast of his incendiary brilliance, hot enough to set the 18th century on fire, I'd like to think he always ended dinner parties, be they at your home or at the tavern, on an agreeable note. You might not know this, but Tom Paine loved to compose songs, political songs, of course. And here's one of his favorites.
In a chariot of light from the regions of day, the goddess of liberty came. 10,000 celestials directed the way, and hither conducted the dame. She held in her hand from the gardens above, where millions with millions agree, a fair budding branch as a pledge of her love, and the plant she named Liberty Tree, and the plant she named the Liberty Tree.
I'm Annie Laurie Gaylor, co-president and co-founder of the Freedom from Religion Foundation. FFRF is the nation's largest association of freethinkers, that means atheists and agnostics, with more than 35,000 members nationwide. FFRF works as a diligent state church watchdog to guard the constitutional wall of separation between state and church. And now I'm also proudly a founding board member of the Thomas Paine Memorial Association. Without Thomas Paine, we would possibly not have even had an American Revolution. His common sense and crisis pamphlets helped foment that revolution, using catchy slogans and compelling reasoning that urged a revolt, not just against taxation, but for true independence from England. Paine didn't just take up his pen, he served as an aide-de-camp and urged that American troops get adequately compensated. Without Thomas Paine, the revolution and new nation would not have had its conscience. Upon arrival in Philadelphia, Paine became the first major figure to publish a call for abolition of slavery, denouncing the African slave trade, and his words should have been heeded. Without Thomas Paine, we would not have had his influential book, The Rights of Man, calling for republicanism over monarchy, public education, relief of the poor, old age pensions paid for by a progressive income tax. Without Thomas Paine, we would not have had the Age of Reason, his devastating takedown of the Bible and revealed religions. We would not be savoring his uplifting ideals, such as his famous quote, "The world is my country, all mankind are my brethren, and to do good is my religion." It is long overdue that the United States of America officially memorialize, recognize, and honor Thomas Paine for helping to create our nation and for urging prescient reforms to help our nation create a more perfect union and a truly compassionate and rational secular republic. We're thrilled we already have a genius sculptor, Xanos Frudakis, working on this memorial, and urge you to contribute so that Thomas Paine and his ideals live on.
Hi, I am Gary Burton, President of the Thomas Paine National Historical Association. It's an honor to be invited to speak today. Our association has a long history of Paine birthday celebrations, and we normally present toasts to a group gathered, but this year we canceled due to pandemic precautions. So I'm happy that Margaret organized this event online. 138 years ago today, our association was formed by professors and progressive political activists on this annual birthday celebration. Since 1825, people in America celebrated Paine's birthdate by remembering Paine's legacy and using his name and that legacy to unite to change the world. Our association has continued this legacy for 138 years, and we have honored our obligations by educating the world about Thomas Paine. I represent our association in this endeavor with our expertise. As the authority on Paine, we are now leading the international effort to complete an official collected works of Thomas Paine, and I can say without hesitation, we are more than doubling the Paine canon, and the result will change the way history had been written, especially about Paine. I got interested in Paine 50 years ago when I was a graduate student in history of political theory. I was familiar with Paine after Bob Dylan introduced me to him through his song, As I Went Out One Morning. I was aghast when I realized Paine was left out of that history of political theory. So out of spite, I set out to correct them, not knowing that our association had already been doing that for decades. It is appalling to see historians in this country still peddling disinformation about Paine, and in particular, his legacy. But like all nonprofit groups represented here, we need support. However, the Thomas Paine Memorial Association project to place the statue in Washington gets priority now. Americans are divided these days, and the spirit of 76, which everyone embraces, whether they are familiar with what that is or not, means Thomas Paine. 1776 started with common sense and ended with Crisis 1, the times that tried men's souls. This statue will help bring back to everyone the first principles of Paine's words. So I will propose a toast, endorsed by our board, that carries on the thoughts and efforts of our association and the accuracy needed in this world today to provide clarity instead of memes and fables. Here is the toast. Quote, "Toasting the man himself is only a small part of the celebration of Paine's birthday. In that part, we honor a man who gave up all profits to serve the cause of liberating mankind from autocracy and superstition. A man who faced death in that quest many times and continued unfazed. A man who faced the wrath of uneducated trolls and greedy men. A man who put the good of all mankind above his own existence. But mostly, we toast his legacy. The age of democratic revolutions was sparked by Thomas Paine. The modern concept of democracy was placed before humanity by Thomas Paine, with the possibility of liberty from tyranny, from poverty, from the chains of superstition, and from helplessness. That is his legacy. Liberty to some means having the right to own slaves, to accumulate wealth at the expense of the majority, to be able to ignore the suffering and hopelessness of masses of the people. Paine said something else that still resonates today. Liberty of an individual is tied to the liberty of all because all are equal. Liberty to Paine means all people. It means collectively guaranteeing liberty. Separating individuals from the collective contradicts the ability of sustaining liberty to both. Hence, to that spark that is still alive and changing the world, we toast. And I will use Paine's own toast and repeat it like I do every year when I can. When Paine was roundly toasted by rooms of people in France at the beginning of the French Revolution, he responded to them to end the toasting. His toast was simple and sweeping, like his prose. Taking the first steps out of the Dark Ages, having laid down the principles to proceed by, he raised his glass and proposed to the revolution of the world. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Robin Blumner, President and CEO of the Center for Inquiry, and it's my pleasure to participate in honoring Thomas Paine, one of the greatest founders in American history. In reading through various Thomas Paine quotes, all brilliant, by the way, I was struck by this one. He said, "To argue with a person who has renounced the use of reason is like administering medicine to the dead." How relevant for today's epidemic of COVID misinformation and anti-vax hysteria. Thomas Paine understood that human progress depends on the use of our critical faculties, our ability to use logical reasoning. Without it, we could be easily led astray by the false promise of religious leaders or political demagogues, or in today's world, by an anti-vaxxer with a large Twitter following. Thomas Paine knew that our lives, our health, and our collective future were not foregone. They were not inevitable. And to succeed, we would have to order society grounded in the best feature in all of us, our ability to reason. What was true then remains true today. If only more people read, listened to, and understood Thomas Paine, well, I don't think we would have 800,000 dead Americans.
Hi, I'm Tom Legg. I'm retired. I was a CPA and taught at the University of Minnesota. I'm now the Vice President of the Grand Rapids Area Freethinkers, a chapter of the Freedom from Religion Foundation. I'm pleased to be a member of the board and the treasurer of the Thomas Paine Memorial Association. Welcome to the 2022 Thomas Paine birthday celebration. I hope you enjoy all of the presentations. Thank you for attending.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Christopher Cameron. I'm professor of history at the University of North Carolina at Charlotte and proud to be a board member of the Thomas Paine Memorial Association. When Margaret Downey asked me to serve on the board, I was delighted to accept, in large part because Thomas Paine is my favorite historical figure to teach about in my courses on the Revolution and early American intellectual history. I first encountered Paine's writings during the spring 2006 while taking an American Revolution course at Keene State College up in New Hampshire. I was struck by Paine's directness and unwillingness to hold any punches. Probably my favorite quote of his comes from Common Sense and revolves around the divine right of kings in England. Paine notes of William the Conqueror that a French bastard landing with an armed banditti and establishing himself king of England against the consent of the natives is in plain terms a very paltry, rascally original. It certainly hath no divinity in it. This quote to me really highlighted the extraordinary way that Paine was able to combine intellect and humor in his writings to reach an audience of ordinary people whom he realized had the ability to topple an empire if they worked together. Along with his intellect and acerbic wit, I truly admire the courageous anti-slavery stance that Paine took beginning in the Revolutionary era. Paine was a man of the Enlightenment, and while that intellectual movement's ideas were used by different writers to undermine or justify slavery, Paine fell on the right side of that question, joining authors such as James Otis and Benjamin Rush in condemning the institution. In February of 1776, shortly after publishing Common Sense, Paine wrote an essay that stated in part that African slavery was against the laws of nature and reason, along with the laws of God and the English nation. And this was months before his fellow revolutionaries on the Committee of Five removed direct reference to King George III forcing the slave trade on the colonies, lest it upset Southern members of the Continental Congress. Paine continued his work and advocacy on behalf of slaves for the next 30 years. Some historians claim that Paine wrote the preamble to the first abolition law in the nation, Pennsylvania's 1780 Gradual Abolition Act. While we don't know this with any certainty, we do know that he joined the Pennsylvania Abolition Society in 1787. This organization had just been reconstituted in 1784 and was the leading anti-slavery organization in the country. It fought to free Black people illegally held as slaves in Pennsylvania and provided legal aid to runaway slaves from other states. In joining this organization then, Paine helped to popularize and strengthen American abolitionism at a key time in the movement's history. With regard to his place among the founding fathers, the historian Manisha Sinha notes that Paine stood far and above most American revolutionaries in his objections to slavery. Paine would also become involved in the British abolitionist movement during the 1790s. This movement was closely intertwined with the French Revolution, and Paine would enter this discussion by critiquing Edmund Burke's criticism of the French Revolution and supporting the efforts of British abolitionists like William Wilberforce. Even from abroad, Paine also continued to encourage and support American anti-slavery activists, noting in one letter to Benjamin Rush that abolition should be pushed in America because it may not occur in Britain, and also advocating for African-American education. He would continue this activism after he returned to the United States, writing to Thomas Jefferson in 1808 to condemn slavery and to argue for reparations for African Americans. Paine consistently argued that slavery was contrary to those ideals that Jefferson himself had penned in the Declaration of Independence. Perhaps just as important as his activism during his lifetime was the way that Paine's writings and ideas inspired future generations of anti-slavery activists. While Northern free soilers and even pro-slavery thinkers made extensive use of Thomas Jefferson's writing on slavery, radical abolitionists such as William Lloyd Garrison looked to Paine for inspiration. Indeed, the motto of William Lloyd Garrison's Liberator newspaper, Our country is the world, our countrymen are mankind, was inspired by the words from Paine's Rights of Man, where he stated, "My country is the world and my religion is to do good." Garrison would adopt a cosmopolitan approach that Paine championed in his work and use that to foster a transnational abolitionist movement. And Garrison also adopted the approach to religion that Paine spoke to, namely as religion was to do good. Along with Garrison, abolitionists in the 1840s increasingly tied the fight against slavery with opposition to industrial capitalism. And here Paine likewise loomed large, with activists such as George Henry Evans drawing on Paine's 1796 work, Agrarian Justice. So for Paine's anti-slavery activism during his lifetime, as well as the influence that he had on leading 19th century abolitionists, Paine deserves to be remembered and memorialized not only as a pioneering founding father, but also as a pioneering anti-slavery activist who made an indelible mark on America's social and political landscape. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Annie Drian, and I was the creative director of NASA's Voyager Interstellar Message and co-writer, director, and producer of all 3 seasons of the Cosmos television series. I am so thrilled to be with all of you, and most especially my fellow board members who've inspired me today with all of their knowledge of the achievements of one of the greatest political imaginations in the history of the world. Not only did Tom Paine speak for and write for all of the things that have been mentioned by previous speakers, but even his style was democratic because he wrote for all of us, not just for the aristocrats, not just for the highly educated. He wrote as he spoke, and that's why Common Sense was the greatest bestseller in the history of the United States, still, proportionate to the population. I think 500,000 copies were circulated before and during the Revolutionary War. Really remarkable. It's not only his principled and clear-seeing advocacy of abolition, but also his understanding that there's a connection between legal rights and economic rights. His belief that the United States should provide pensions for working men, support for pregnant women so that they would be nourished and their offspring would thrive. His belief that there should be state pensions at the age of 50 for every person. His understanding that legal justice was meaningless without economic justice. He advocated for universal suffrage at a time when John Adams thought only that landowners should be able to vote. Can you imagine the United States and the planet that would have resulted if Tom Paine had been listened to, instead of the defenders of slavery, and instead of the people who believed that somehow the upper classes were entitled to more rights than everyone else? You know, he said, "We have in our power to make the world new again." When, in the tenure of all of human existence on this planet, have we needed so badly to remake this world, to make it new again? And when he said, "My country is the world," he was expressing the planetary perspective that we desperately need at this very moment in order to meet the challenges of environmental degradation and climate change. We have come to the point where we are able to look squarely and critically at some of the figures in American history, to tear down the statues of human traffickers, of people who committed crimes against humanity. But we're not tearing down those statues because we're opposed to history. Indeed, it's our love of history, a love of accurate, truthful history that makes it so important to erect statues in honor of those whose values still have meaning for us. And so there's not a lot that Napoleon ever said or did that I agree with. But he did say that he wished that there was a golden statue of Thomas Paine in every room in the universe. Now, the Thomas Paine that I know and love wouldn't have wanted it to be gold. The gold wouldn't have meant anything to him. But the remembrance and our capacity to fight and to work for the things that he believed in, that's what would have meant the most to him. So I say happy birthday, Tom Paine, and thank you for your manifold gifts to all of us. We are still doing our best to catch up to you and your brilliant philosophy.
Hello, I'm Julia Sweeney. I'm an actress and comedian and writer, and I couldn't be more honored to be on this committee. And I am on this committee because I care a lot about Thomas Paine, but I also care a lot about Margaret Downey and her tenaciousness at trying to get this statue built and up in DC is so admirable, and I'm so happy to be part of it. And it's really because of her that I learned so much about Thomas Paine. Having a almost complete Catholic education, we never mentioned Thomas Paine at all. We practically never mentioned the Revolution. I think most of my essays were about why the Reformation was wrong. Anyway, I have a few comments here. Hold on. I'm here to say that I want to talk about my dear friend, Thomas Paine. Now, how is he your friend, you may ask? He died in 1809 and you were born in 1959, 150 years apart from death to birth. But I will tell you this, when I look in the dictionary under the definition of a friend, I see a person other than a family member, lover, or spouse whose company one enjoys and toward whom one feels affection. My feeling is, why do I have to pick my friends just among the living when there's someone like Thomas Paine who can be my friend? And really, I'm telling you, I can hear him in my mind, and I admire him so much. Because when people talk about the American experiment, the whole idea of the American experiment, they're really echoing what Thomas Paine felt, what he wanted. He wanted to start history again, and he wanted democracy. And I admire that so much. Now that I've spent so much time around the secular community, I feel like I can see often that you can divide secularists into a couple of categories. And the first category is the nobody's going to tell me what to do atheist. That's really primarily why they're not religious. And then there's another category, which is, oh, if there's no God who's watching out for us and orchestrating everything, and if humans tend to desire power by exploiting their fellow humans, we should do something about it because no one else is going to. I would say of those two categories, Thomas Paine is in the second category in the best possible way for the longest period of time of anyone that I know of. I love that in spite of the fact that Thomas Paine came from incredible poverty and lack of opportunity, he made his own way in the world. He made his own name and became a great writer. But I often see, because I happen to know a lot of people in this kind of category, not as great as him, obviously, but who really created themselves out of nothing. Thomas Paine retained his care and love for people who are downtrodden, who didn't get a lucky break like him. And I often see people who make it in the world based on their own juice They just think everyone in the world has to work hard. But that's not what Thomas Paine thought. He could see that there were structural barriers to people living happy lives. Like if you were a slave, or if you were older, or if you were never had any opportunity for education. And so that's why I love Thomas Paine the most. Now, Thomas Paine and I, we have our laughs. I'll tell you what we laugh about. For one thing, it makes me laugh so hard that in Common Sense, he tried to use the Bible, the Old Testament, mind you, to justify that there should not be kings and queens and a monarchy, which is pretty funny because King David and King Solomon are generally referred to or seen by people as good kings, although we could debate that. But I laugh with Tom about that. I tease him about it. But there was something that Thomas Paine really understood, which was most people see the Bible as the authority on what is good handed down from above. But simultaneously, most people really don't know what's in the Bible. And he used that to kind of give an argument why monarchy didn't make sense. And for lots of people, especially those young men that they were asking to fight in the Revolutionary War, this really worked on them in a good way. They understood, why should there be a monarchy? Now, sometimes we get into some dangerous territory, me and Thomas Paine, because sometimes when I look out at what's happening in the world now, I say to Thomas, do you really think the revolution was worth it? When I look out there at England and Canada and Australia, maybe if we'd stuck with England, we would have, say, universal health care. And then Thomas Paine says, yes, that's true, but I guess I just didn't realize how much oligarchy and big money would fill the vacuum that the monarchy left. And then I say, Thomas Paine, look at the countries in Europe who have the least wealth inequality, like Sweden and Denmark. They have kings and queens. And he says, oh, Julia, please, we can't go back there again. We have our laughs. I really wish that Thomas Paine were alive today, because I would like to be in charge of his campaign to run for office. We really need him. And I've already been thinking up some good slogans for him. For example, no pain, no gain. Come on, people. That's a good one. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. And I want to give a welcome to all those who have joined us. If you missed the intro at the beginning, welcome to the 2022 Thomas Paine Day celebration. The next two presenters are also members of the Thomas Paine Memorial Association Board of Directors. First, we'll hear from actor Ian Ruskin, followed by the president of the Thomas Paine Memorial Association, Margaret Downey. Welcome, Ian.
Hi. Thank you, Emily, for handling the audio visuals. Thank you, Margaret, for envisioning and organizing this event. And thank you, June Stoddard, for the photographs I'll be showing you in a moment. So, happy birthday, Thomas Paine. Your impact on the world cannot be overestimated, and neither can the need that we have for your vision today. When you said, if trouble must come, let it come in my time so that my children can live in peace, you were talking about a potential war with England. Today, we have a different kind of challenge in America, but one that has come in our time, and it is up to us to face. I hope that Paine's vision for America can be an inspiration to us all. So, having said that, yes, I am Ian Ruskin. I'm an English actor, writer living in Los Angeles, also a board member of the association. I write and perform one-man plays about men that I consider to have been misunderstood and misused in history. And I believe Thomas Paine to be the most misunderstood and maligned man in American history. And so I wrote To Begin the World Over Again, The Life of Thomas Paine. and began performing it in 2012. In 2019, I decided to put together a short tour of England, following in his footsteps by performing in some of the towns and villages that he lived in. Now, I left for England with a certain amount of trepidation. Some English still consider him a traitor. After all, he did call for an end to the English monarchy, not to mention fighting for fundamental rights for all men and all women, and perhaps some people see that as a sign of a traitor as well. And I had read stories of English nobility grinding up some of his bones when they arrived back in London and putting them in the heels of their boots in order to spend the rest of their lives walking all over Thomas Paine, although that may well be folklore. But what I found in England, certainly in these places where he had lived, was that there was a pride in the connection to Paine, and a pride in the fact that these places had helped to make him the man who would change the world. And for me, it was thrilling to literally walk in his footsteps, walk on his floorboards, stand in the churches where he was married, sit in his classroom, and to get a sense of the world that he grew up in. And he gave me a strong sense of the man as opposed to the great writer, something that biographies can't really give you. So today I want to share some of that with you and give you a taste of his world in England. And hopefully by the end of this entire presentation, you will agree with all of us that this man needs a statue in Washington, DC. I performed in 3 towns that he had lived in. And the remarkable thing is that they're all largely unchanged from Paine's time, not just the buildings related to Paine, but the entire towns. They are full of buildings from the 16th and 17th and 18th centuries. This certainly does not apply to Los Angeles. So, Thetford, Norfolk, where Paine was born and lived the first 19 years of his life. It was a town of 3,000 inhabitants, with 43 having the right to vote, run by the Graftons, the local nobility, and it was a good example of what were known as rotten boroughs. Paine was, I'm sure, very aware of this inequality growing up, and of the poverty, and of a justice system that could hang a man for stealing a pound of tea. Now, I was coerced to walk through these villages in full costume. It's hard to say no to very kind hosts. So, walking through Thetford, mainly on empty streets, much to my relief, under a blue sky, you can see the age of the buildings. A note up ahead on the left, Thetford's statue, Charles Thomas Wheeler, unveiled in 1964, with Paine holding a copy of Rights of Man, for some reason upside down. It was ironically put in front of the King's house that had been a resting stop for English kings and their entourages. The Bell Inn that Paine walked past every day on his way to school. That corner beam was the town notice board. And I'm sure that Paine would stop each day to read the latest news, check out the things that were for sale. Paine's School. This is outside the entrance to the grounds. And here is the entrance to the classroom. This school is the second oldest in England. It first opened in 631, not 1631, 631. When Paine went to school there 270 years ago, it had already been teaching pupils for 1,000 years. Entering the classroom and sitting down with the terribly nice and terribly English headmaster with a terribly English bow tie. The school in Paine's time was one large room with a large fireplace that the teacher stood in front of. Then you would have the oldest pupils next, and as you got further away from the heat, so the pupils got younger. The first graders lived through some very cold winters. My performance was in one of the school halls, largely to the sixth formers, the 11th and 12th graders. They were very attentive and much too polite to laugh out loud. I would rather have had a noisy crowd laughing, but at least they were listening. Much of the adult population of Thetford were at another event that night, a touring show starring cast members of Dad's Army, an English TV sitcom from the 1970s about a chaotic home guard trying to prepare for a German invasion in the Second World War. Even Thomas Paine couldn't compete with a draw like that. But the Thetford statue was recently given a coating of gold leaf. Then on to Dis, where Paine lived and worked as a corset maker. This is what welcomes you to Dis. I'm not sure whether these figures are philosophers or theologians. Paine would have approved of the former, not the latter. So, more walking in costume to a little gathering in the mud, a little presentation. Note my expression of slight disbelief and my walking shoes. The gentleman in the pink is Benjamin Franklin, in the blue, Thomas Paine. You see, Dis does not have a statue of Paine, but it does have its very own living Thomas Paine. Then more walking past one of the many pubs. And this is the Corn Hall, the performance space created from what was the old hall where corn was bought and sold. And the performance, a little grander than Thetford's School Hall, and the audience laughed more, for which I was most thankful. Well, Lewis, Paine rode into town as an excise inspector in 1768. His job was to chase and capture smugglers, often with his sword drawn. He lived in Lewis for 6 years. It was a hotbed of radical thought in terms of both political and religious freedom and rights. Paine wrote The Case of the Officers of Excise while living there, a call for the organizing of his fellow officers. We might call it trying to organize a union. Parliament turned it down. Bull House, where Paine rented the room with the bay window above the tobacconist shop owned by Samuel Olive. The shop sold tobacco, pipes, walking sticks, boots, caps, general provisions. After Olive's death, Paine married his daughter Elizabeth, a marriage of affection and mutual support. Also, it would have been scandalous for a single man and a single woman to share a house together in the 18th century. In any case, if you go up those steps to the right of the building, you enter a courtyard with an imposing door that leads you into a small library from where Paine would sit and read books, and then into the nonconformist chapel where Paine and Elizabeth were married. Then they had to go across the street to the Anglican church to make their vows legal in the eyes of God. Then there's the White Hart Hotel, which is still a pub to drink in. And upstairs is the Headstrong Club, the room where Paine debated. The winner of each debate signed his name in an honor roll. Paine usually won the debate. He was also very good at lawn bowling. That is the lawn that he bowled on, with Lewis Castle ruins overlooking it. Lewis is surrounded by 7 hills. You can see one of them in the background of this photo. Now, each hill has a society that still spends each year preparing themed costumes, anything from pirates to cowboys to knights of the Round Table, and bands and bonfires with effigies of Guy Fawkes. Guy Fawkes was the man who tried and failed to blow up Parliament in 1605. And he is celebrated in England with bonfires since he was burnt at the stake, and fireworks as if he succeeded. In fact, it has never been clear in my mind whether you're celebrating the fact that he was caught or the fact that he tried to blow it up in the first place. There is also a saying that Guy Fawkes was the last honest man to enter Parliament. In any case, November 5th is Guy Fawkes' night, and nowhere celebrates the night like Lewes. It's a mixture of modern anarchy and historical religious tyranny, with those burning torches and smoke everywhere and marching through town before the fireworks and bonfires on the Seven Hills. I was there once, years ago, and it was very exciting. I imagine that Paine loved it. Lewes also, in Paine's time, had unusually cold winters, and he was an excellent ice skater on the River Ouse running through Lewes. In fact, he was known as the Commodore. My performance was in the All Saints Center in a converted 15th century church, a very appreciative audience. I think that Lewes is still quite a radical place. The statue by Marcus Cornish is between the Lewes Library and the Quaker Meeting House, quite appropriate. It does look as if he's carrying the weight of the world, but perhaps he was. And that is sunlight catching the tip of his nose, perhaps also appropriate. He had rather a long one. London has a rather somber monument to him. Paris, of course, a very elegant one. But Margaret will tell you more about that. So that is my little tour. I came away from England with a much clearer sense of the man who was not only a great philosopher and writer, he was also a great horseman, swordsman, bowler, skater, and a vibrant part of the world that he lived in. So I hope I have given you some sense of that. As an obituary in the New York Advertiser in 1809 said, "Take him, for all in all, we shall ne'er look on his like again." This is a man who deserves to have a statue in Washington, D.C. Thank you, and I'll now pass the program on to Margaret Downey.
Thank you, Ian. That was a fascinating presentation, and I really loved your photos. You bring Thomas Paine back to life with your acting skills, costume, and delivery of his important social equality position. Many people are curious about my passion to honor Thomas Paine. So I'll start my presentation by explaining that at age 10, I announced that I thought the Bible was full of nonsense. When I told my family that I would never believe in a God that was described in the Bible, my family thought I was going through just a phase. Well, still declaring my atheist position at age 13 and refusing to go to church, my adopted uncle gave me reading materials that included Thomas Paine's The Age of Reason. Uncle Floyd thought I might want to learn about deism, which was the philosophy of most of the founding fathers. Thomas Paine's words made me realize that I wasn't alone in my thinking concerning the fallacy of the Bible and my mistrust of authority figures. Thomas Paine became my hero, and I read as much as I could about his life and work. It would be decades before an opportunity arrived for me to discover that Thomas Paine was actually a forgotten founding father. In 1991, I moved to Pennsylvania, near the city of Philadelphia. Knowing that Thomas Paine had arrived in Philadelphia on November 30th, 1774, I immediately started looking for Thomas Paine-related tourist stops. In 1991, there were no public historic sites dedicated to the work Thomas Paine had accomplished in Philadelphia. In 1993, I contacted the office of Philadelphia Mayor Ed Rendell to request that June 8th be declared Thomas Paine Day. The proclamation was approved in 1994. When 4 founding members of the Freethought Society picked up the proclamation, we immediately began to conduct the first City of Philadelphia Thomas Paine Day, right outside of City Hall. In the lower right photo next to me are Ken Barnes, Bill Getz, and Tom Melchior. Later in the day, Mark Stone, a longtime Philadelphia educator, joined us for lunch. Mark and I had talked on the phone many times prior to that 1994 Thomas Paine Day, and I was happy to finally meet him in person. While the Freethought Society board members picked up the Thomas Paine Day proclamation from the mayor's office, Mark had been tasked to pick up the Philadelphia City Council resolution that also declared June 8, 1994 as Thomas Paine Day. The resolution specified that Rayborn Plaza in downtown Philadelphia was officially named Thomas Paine Plaza. And the resolution recognized a portion of Chancellor Street between Dock Street and 3rd Street as Thomas Paine Place. 1994 was a productive year as we continued to pursue many more efforts with Mark Stone to fully honor Thomas Paine. We also reached out to the mayors of York and Lancaster, Pennsylvania, because Thomas Paine lived in those areas for a short time. I have just a few photos of my friend Mark Stone, who's now deceased, but I cherished his friendship very much. I mention Mark Stone today because I want to give him credit for all he did to honor Thomas Paine's legacy. Fortunately, by June 8, 1995, the reconstruction of the Thomas Paine Plaza was complete. The beautiful plaza provided us with the perfect venue to host a huge Thomas Paine Day event. Now, on that day, in June 1995, the Freethought Society hosted an array of speakers and approximately 100 children from the Thomas Paine Elementary School. They arrived to Philadelphia from Cherry Hill, New Jersey by bus. It was such a thrill to lead a 3-block parade to the Thomas Paine Plaza. Following me was a fife player, drummer, and flag bearer. I'll never forget how proud I was entering the Thomas Paine Plaza on Thomas Paine Day, 1995. Ralph Archibald, who's best known for his longtime impersonation of Benjamin Franklin, walked in front of the excited and cheering group of 5th and 6th graders. In the upper right photo is longtime advocate of Thomas Paine, David Henley. He's the one carrying a large portrait of his hero. Sadly, David died on March 1st, 2020. His widow, Nancy Henley, is in the audience today. David left his collection of Thomas Paine memorabilia to the Freethought Society in the hopes that we would sell items to pay for the placement of a Thomas Paine statue in either Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, or New York City. The large collection is currently being categorized and we'll be announcing buying opportunities soon. Please keep in touch with us to be the first to know what's going to be offered. Now, thanks to Mayor Rendell, city council members, and the news crew that showed up that day in 1995, Thomas Paine Day received a lot of attention. Later that evening, the celebration continued at the Thomas Paine restaurant, located in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. The mayors of both York and Lancaster presented their Thomas Paine Day proclamations. They delivered speeches, dined with us, and enjoyed the full program. The Thomas Paine restaurant burned to the ground around midnight, just 1 hour after everyone had gone home. A chef accidentally left the deep fryer on, and the overheated oil sparked the devastating fire. No one was injured, but the Thomas Paine restaurant on Queen Street in Lancaster is no more. I'm glad to have this photo, which was taken at the restaurant. With me is the owner of the restaurant and my dear friend, George Kelly. In 1996, I started writing the text for a Thomas Paine coloring book for children. I soon realized that I knew Thomas Paine's life story so well that I could actually conduct elementary school assemblies. The sample coloring book page that you see was done by an artist who's being considered for the commission. Thomas Paine wrote the John Crow poem at 8 years of age, after having found a dead crow in his parents' garden. Here lies the body of John Crow, who once was high, but now is low. Ye brother crows, take warning all, for as you rise, so must you fall. Now, with permission from school administrators, I select a male child to read the poem during school assemblies. But it was on the advice of Mayor Rendell that I started to tell the life story of Thomas Paine while portraying Thomas Paine's longtime friend, Madame Marguerite Bonneville. Ed Rendell went on to become the governor of Pennsylvania, and each winter holiday, I would receive a card from him, which always included a Thomas Paine quotation. With the success of writing Thomas Paine Day proclamations in Pennsylvania, the confidence of delivering school assemblies, and the support of the Freethought Society donors, I set my goals to present an assembly at all elementary schools in the entire country named after Thomas Paine. In 1999, the very first Thomas Paine school assembly took place in Garden Grove, California. Coincidentally, my daughter Holly attended the very same Thomas Paine Elementary School in 1977. She's pictured here with me holding one side of the Thomas Paine Elementary School banner. In 2001, I conducted an assembly at the Thomas Paine Elementary School in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. Cherry Hill Mayor Susan Levine delivered a Thomas Paine proclamation to the school, and she actually stayed to enjoy the entire presentation. In 2009, I conducted an assembly at the Thomas Paine Elementary School in Urbana, Illinois. Mayor Laurel Lint Pressing delivered a Thomas Paine Day proclamation to the school, and along with the entire Urbana City Council, they stayed to enjoy the assembly. Within a few years, I conducted 3 more assemblies at elementary schools in Pennsylvania, not named after Thomas Paine. The life and work of Thomas Paine is so interesting that students eagerly ask questions. They also thoroughly enjoy the way I dress a teacher as Thomas Paine right in front of their eyes. It's the tricorn hat and the oversized shirt that makes them laugh the most. If we have any teachers or school officials watching this Zoom presentation today, please note that there is a Thomas Paine Assembly Grant application available. You can find the application at the Freethought Society's website. That's ftsociety.org. Click the Thomas Paine tab on the left side of the homepage, and that will lead you to the Assembly Grant application. Before I tell you about portraying Madame Bonneville during the 2017 Paris, France walking tour, I want to acknowledge the Thomas Paine Unitarian Church in Eagleville, Pennsylvania. I've been an invited speaker there several times, so I want to thank them publicly for encouraging me to continue my work. Now, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the Paris, France Thomas Paine walking tour. This photo was taken at a Paris hotel garden as we began our tour day. Standing behind me are Gary Burton and Julian Mussolino. Gary, as some of you already know, is a Thomas Paine Memorial Association board member, historian, teacher, and Thomas Paine expert. Julian is a professor, author, and Thomas Paine lookalike. During the tour, Gary provided historical facts. Julian spoke the words of Thomas Paine as they related to each location we visited, and I conveyed trivia as only Madame Bonneville could. The idea to host a walk in the footsteps of Thomas Paine tour arose from an invitation I received to attend a Paris conference hosted by the International Association of Freethought. Organizers of the event loved the idea of a Thomas Paine themed tour, so they happily arranged for car, van rentals, drivers, literature, and translators. I'll be showing you photos and highlights about the 8 stops we planned during that visit. The stops were designed by convenience of location rather than in historic chronological order. The script we use for each stop is available at the Freethought Society's website under the Thomas Paine tab. We hope visitors to Paris will find the information helpful should they want to walk in the footsteps of Thomas Paine. In the document, there is much more trivia and interesting information that I don't have time to convey in this presentation. So even if you're not planning a trip to Paris, you may enjoy reading the document. Stop number 1 was in Saint Denis. Paine stayed at a hotel on this site. Madame Pompadour, King Louis XV's mistress, she resided there at one time. Thomas Paine, in fact, stayed in the very rooms that Madame Pompadour occupied when she was a resident. The next stop was once the residence of James and Elizabeth Monroe. James Monroe was serving as the United States of America's minister to France, and he was the one who finally secured Thomas Paine's release from prison. Thomas Paine lived with Elizabeth and James from 1794 to 1797. He arrived at the Monroe's home very ill and malnourished after having been incarcerated for almost 11 months. Both James and his wife Elizabeth are credited for saving Thomas Paine's life, thanks to the loving care that they provided. It's said that Thomas Paine wrote part 1 of The Age of Reason at the White's Hotel. This is also the spot where Thomas Paine socialized with his friends just one day prior to being arrested and sent to the Luxembourg prison. On the way to Luxembourg, he was allowed to call on his friend, Joel Barlow. Thomas Paine gave part 1 of The Age of Reason to Barlow for publication. Thomas Paine visited Tuileries in 1781, when he arrived in Paris for the first time. In August 1792, during the French Revolution, the people stormed this palace. The French Revolution was declared in September of that year. The palace became the seat of government, housing the convention and assembly, along with the offices of the committees. Thomas Paine visited the Hôtel de la Monnaie frequently during 1788 and 1789 to meet with the Marquis de Lafayette. Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Paine, and Thomas Jefferson were regular guests at the Hôtel de la Monnaie. Luxembourg prison was where prisoners of the French Revolution were detained. Thomas Paine narrowly escaped death there. At one point during his incarceration, an illness caused him to be incapacitated. Since he was ill and confined to his bed of straw, his cell door was left open. One night, the prison guards received a list of those who would be executed the following day. The name Thomas Paine appeared on that list. The guards found Thomas's cell, and in chalk, they marked the door with an X, not noticing that the door was facing the wrong way. The next morning, just before the prisoners were taken from their cells to be executed, Thomas's door was shut, causing the chalk mark to face the inside of the cell rather than the outside. Fortunately, the guards, not seeing a chalk mark, never took Thomas to the execution scaffold. Thomas Paine was detained in Luxembourg from December 1793 to November 17th. From December 17th, 93 to November 1794. Thomas Paine moved in with printer and writer Nicolas de Bonneville in the spring of 1797, after having recovered from the ailments he suffered as a prisoner at Luxembourg. Thomas Paine lived with the Bonnevilles for 5 years. Madame Bonneville documented many interesting occurrences that took place during that time. For instance, on one visit to the house, Napoleon Bonaparte disclosed that he slept with Thomas Paine's book, The Rights of Man, under his pillow. Madame Bonneville's recollections provide great insight into who visited Thomas Paine and what he enjoyed doing with his time and how he became an important part of the Bonneville family. I highly recommend reading more about the relationship between Thomas Paine and the Bonnevilles. The last stop on the Paris tour was the Thomas Paine statue. The statue is located in front of the City University inside Parc Montessori's. The leading promoter of this Thomas Paine statue was Joseph Lewis. He was an American freethinker, publisher, litigator, and atheist activist. The gold finish was inspired by Napoleon Bonaparte, who said, "A statue of gold should be erected to Thomas Paine in every city in the universe." Joseph Lewis also supervised the placement of a golden statue in Thetford, England, the birthplace of Thomas Paine, on this date in 1737. With the same passion as Joseph Lewis, the Thomas Paine Memorial Association statue project is my latest effort to honor a great patriot, freethinker, writer, inventor, a person ahead of his time, and an ethical, honorable man, Thomas Paine. I hope audience members will join our efforts, donate generously, and help with this exciting new statue project. But today, I extend an invitation to anyone planning to visit Philadelphia to contact me. I can provide you with information about where to find Thomas Paine related historical sites. I may be able to meet you to show you around Philadelphia, very likely in regular street clothes, unless you happen to join us for one of the very special Thomas Paine events you see pictured. My contact information is available at the Thomas Paine Memorial Association and Freethought Society websites. Maybe someday there will be a statue of Thomas Paine in Philadelphia, but for now, the Thomas Paine Memorial Association's mission is to fund, create, and install a statue of Thomas Paine somewhere in Washington, D.C. The project is moving along well, and I'm pleased to announce that thousands of dollars in donations have been received so far. And thank you everyone. Your financial support means so much to us. Remember that the generous triple matching offer from the Stiefel Freethought Foundation is good until midnight tonight, January 29th, 2022. Let's show the donation information again. To donate, please go to the link that you see on the screen or send us a check with today's date on it. With the Stiefel Freethought Foundation triple match opportunity, a $17.76 donation becomes $53.28, and a $1,076 donation becomes $5,328. An opportunity such as this should not be missed. Now, let's see how the statue of Thomas Paine is progressing by highlighting one of the top sculptors in the world, Zenos Frudakis, who is joining us from his studio in Glenside, Pennsylvania.
Thank you, Margaret. It's fitting that you introduced me because when we first met, one of the things that you did was tell me about your passion for Thomas Paine. And it's something that we shared, but you were so excited. You said you felt like there needs to be a sculpture of Thomas Paine. And I think that, and the other great thing you did, of course, was introduce me to Annie Laurie, and we created together the Clarence Darrow sculpture. And of course, Darrow loved Paine as well. I think that if you look at Washington, D.C., you see the people that are admired and appreciated in our government seat, and Thomas Paine's not there. That tells you something. And he was such a giant in his time. I mean, you have Thomas Jefferson sculpture that's 19 feet high. You have many other sculptures in the city. And this is a 7-foot piece that I'm working on now. Now, please don't judge this yet as a final product because this is in that awkward stage in the process. It's going to get a lot better. But in fact, I've just, I'm getting a authentic costume made by Craig Nanos, who's a historical expert of costumes. And I'm going to have a model, and I've got, you see many pictures, and I listen to Paine books as I work. It's all to inform my brain and my fingers to try to create a fitting tribute. I have to say, I'm extremely honored to be working on this project. I've admired Paine for a long time, and I think of him as such a wonderful Enlightenment figure. You know, in his time, like many other people of who were gentlemen, he was also a scientist. He was a polymath, and he had this bridge project that he worked on. He designed a marvelous bridge, and I think of him in a sense as a bridge from the very intellectual men of the Enlightenment, the Voltaires, the Diderots, the Montesquieu's, the Locke's, and Franklin, his friend. And he was the bridge to the common man, to the average man. And in common sense, he put much of their philosophy of these very educated people into a language that they could understand. And of course, he was largely responsible for American culture. Most people at the time probably didn't want to break from England, but his writing helped them break from England. And and also, of course, later encouraged the Army with Crisis and other things that he wrote. So I'm not going to say very much because I'm not a wordsmith, and we've had so many wonderful things said already. But I wanted to show you, I started with a small maquette. We're not sure yet where it's going to go in Washington, so I'm trying to keep the piece general enough so it'll fit many possible locations. But I think that the other thing that's interesting to me is that it's just, you know, in our time, this vacuum of not having Paine in Washington, you realize how much of a vacuum it is, because look at the lack of a reason and science in our culture today. And so I think we have it, if I can paraphrase Paine, in our power to create his reputation and image anew in Washington. So thank you. I will try to keep you updated on the progress and post photos as it moves along.
Thank you so much. And we really look forward to seeing the finished work, as well as being able to visit it and invite everyone to join us. At this time, I'm going to bring back some of the speakers we heard from, and we're going to have some time to bring up some questions. I will try to find all of them that came up in the chat, and we can also save all of the questions that we don't get to. Let's see, trying to make sure I find everybody. Great. And I don't know who to direct this to, so I'm kind of gonna let you all decide who wants to grab it. But I did see the first question was, how was Paine so disenchanted with Washington, specifically with the presidency and government?
Okay, I'll jump in. Paine had many reservations about Washington as a military leader. Washington was involved in they called the French Indian Wars, the American. He fought Indians not very well. He caused trouble, actually. That's one thing. The specific reason that Paine was so angry when he was in the Luxembourg Palace prison was he felt that Washington ignored him and did not step in to save his life. There is controversy about whether Washington was entirely aware of what was going on because of the time it took for messages to go back and forth. Also, France, there was the issue of France and England were at war, and Washington was wanting to repair relations with England, and so there were politics going on as well. But there's no doubt that Paine was very unhappy about that, and by writing that letter, that plus the Age of Reason really put the nails in his coffin in America, because Washington was a god in America. But those are two specific things. There were other things. One, he didn't approve of Washington having slaves. There were other issues, but those were two in particular.
Well said. Thank you, Ian.
There was a little curiosity in the chat of Thomas Paine's sexuality. I don't know if anyone want to chime in on information they have on that.
Actually, Thomas Paine was married twice, and he loved his first wife so much, Mary, and she died in childbirth. He was so saddened by this that he probably would have never married again until he realized that Miss Olive, who was the daughter of a tobaccoist, she she could not run the tobacco shop as a single woman. And there's talk about whether he did it out of making sure that she wouldn't be accused of living in sin with Thomas Paine, but they did marry. They did not get along that well. And shortly afterwards, Thomas Paine left for the colonies. But he did always send her money. She was well cared for, even though they were separated. So, Thomas Paine shows his generosity in that way. But, what can you say about the past sexuality of a person? Unknown.
We had someone say, would anyone here be able to address the historic fact Paine was a deist and free-thinking Mason like Jefferson and Washington?
Oh, he wrote a wonderful essay about Freemasonry. Please look it up. It's extremely interesting.
And I don't know if we have an answer for the moment, but there was a question about how much we've raised so far.
Yes, I'm approximating, but it looks like about $14,000 has been raised.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And we'll continue to make sure that the chat has a link so that can continue. Next question was, did Paine and the other founders read Montesquieu? And the person says, I suspect they did, and that's where the separation of powers came from in the Constitution.
Well, yes, I think he did read Montesquieu, and he certainly was familiar. My understanding is that the first person to write of the necessity of the separation of church and state was Baruch Spinoza, long before. And it was his understanding that there could be no such thing as a democratic society in a theocracy, or where a particular religion was favored, which was such an inspiration to all of the revolutionary philosophers of the 18th century. It was the boldest, nerviest thing he could possibly do. And Spinoza was fearless. And I believe he's the source of that idea. What's so interesting about Paine, as has been observed, is that he's not just saying separation of church and state. He's not just writing a masterwork which examines critically and logically the claims made in the Old and New Testament, but he's also imagining a framework for a society in which all of us have the potential to manifest our gifts. And he's thinking that there has to be universal suffrage. The state cannot have the power to execute. There has to be the economic wherewithal for every person to have enough to live in order to pursue a democratic society. How can we be informed decision makers if we are hungry and if we are ill-educated? And so he invents the dream of America, or the idea that it's possible for us to live in huge aggregates of population and yet still treat each other fairly. And so that's just another reason to adore him.
And so, Margaret, you had mentioned about a lot of the Thomas Paine schools. We did have someone asking if anyone knows if there are any Paine-related sites in the U.S. that one can visit.
Well, of course.
Sorry.
New Rochelle, of course. What were you going to say, Anne?
You could go to Grove Street in Manhattan and stand. The building in which Paine died is long gone, but you can stand at that address and know where he was in a very different moment when he died.
And across the street is the Marie's Crisis Cafe. And there's a plaque recognizing Thomas Paine and that he used to debate people there. It's Greenwich Village now, but here's a little secret. When you go into this Marie's Crisis Cafe, go straight up to the bar, and there's a huge mirror, and there's an etching on this huge mirror. And on one side is the United States and Thomas Paine there, an etching of him. There's the England and an etching of him, and France. And a lot of people just go to the bar. It's a fantastic sing-along bar, piano sing-along. And I love it because they do show tunes. But here's another secret about that place. You ask to see the wood carving of Thomas Paine. And if you're fortunate, they will take you up a narrow staircase, and hidden away is a door with the etching of Thomas, a full etching of his full body of Thomas Paine. And nobody knows about this, but now I've told 400 of my closest friends this little secret. But it makes going to Marie's Crisis Cafe that much more exciting.
And so we're going back to the statue that's going to be in DC. Someone I was asking, has the U.S. Commission of Fine Arts in DC agreed to the erection of a statue on federal property? Do you have a location yet?
No location yet.
Something to look forward to. We had someone asking, why was Paine arrested in Paris?
Oh, I'll jump in there because it's he was technically arrested because he was a delegate to the National Convention representing Calais, despite his lack of French. But a law was passed that because he was arrested because he was English. This is the formal reason, and France was at war with England. That's technically why he was arrested. It's my belief, and generally the belief of a lot of people, that he was really arrested because he fought hard to spare the life of the king. And he did that for three reasons. He thought he was against capital punishment as a principle. He felt that if the king was executed, it might inspire other European monarchs to band together and wage war on France. And he was aware of what France had done to help America win the war. And he suggested the king would be exiled to America. He said, America would love to have him. You tell him if he ever comes back, we'll take off your head and let him go to America. And it nearly passed. The vote was not that far off. But obviously the vote was to behead him. He was beheaded. And I think it was at that moment that Paine became the marked man to be taken down. And he was nearly beheaded himself while in the Luxembourg prison.
People are curious about the relationship between Paine and Lafayette and Jefferson.
Just like-minded individuals with a lot to discuss politically. Thomas Jefferson and Thomas Paine actually lived together for a short period of time when Thomas Paine returned to the United States of America, a name that he coined. And they would brainstorm constantly about public education, Social Security, all kinds of social reforms. So, they were the closest of friends until Thomas Paine insisted on berating Jefferson's owning of slaves. And I think Ian mentioned that he wrote a letter to Thomas Jefferson, signed "A Slave," and that enraged Thomas Jefferson. And so they didn't talk to each other after that, but that was pretty later on in their relationship. But they were very, very close confidants, and a lot could be found if you research that relationship between Thomas Paine, Lafayette, and Jefferson.
And related, there's also a question of the influence that Thomas Paine had on the Declaration of Independence. Apparently, some books have suggested that he might have written the first draft.
I can take this. He didn't write the first draft of the Declaration, but his ideas and his approach are all throughout it, right? So, I mean, common sense, I think, was in large part or primarily about severing the ties and that sort of intellectual and cultural and social bond to the person of the king, right? Americans at that point, or the American colonists at that point, by and large, I think recognized or felt that Parliament as a political body was tyrannical, but there was still that attachment to the king, and common sense, I think, better than any other writing in revolutionary America, really helped to sever that tie. And then the Declaration takes that very same approach, right? It's all about what King George III has done or has not done to help the colonies.
If I may say, the style of it is very much an echo of common sense, in that it's an exhortation to everyone, not merely to the well-educated and the upper class. The tone of it, the rhetorical spirit of it, is very much, I believe, derivative of the style that Thomas Paine introduced.
So here's a question for all of the speakers. What do you think is the primary reason why Paine isn't better known?
Well, he was
written out of.
Go ahead, Margaret. I'll go for you.
Okay, he was written out of history books. People were very confused about Thomas Paine. One of the presidents, Roosevelt, he said he called him a dirty little atheist, which was none of that was true. He wasn't little, he wasn't dirty, and he wasn't an atheist.
Which Roosevelt?
I believe it was Teddy.
It must have been
Teddy.
Not Franklin, right?
No.
No.
No, but the misunderstanding. Now, we have to be aware that after the Age of Reason, many tabloid type rumors were circulated about Thomas Paine, which were totally false. But they wanted to discredit a man who would dare to attack religion, priests, rabbis. This was unheard of during Thomas Paine's life, and he dared to question authority, and that's what I admire most about Thomas Paine. Ian, you have something to add?
Oh, well, no, thank you. He was also against slavery in a very open, public way by publishing the article that was part of someone's presentation. And also in Common Sense, he talks about this horrific trade of human flesh. So he was against slavery, which that's the basis of early America. He was English. He came from a sort of working class background in England. He was not seen as being educated, although he was quite well educated. He was not a good politician. He never was a good politician. He said the wrong things. He insulted people. He also, this is my final answer to this question, and this has been said earlier. He was the one man. He wrote for the common people. When Paine wrote, people understood what he was saying. That was very frightening to the rulers, the ruling class of the colonies. They did not want the masses of the people thinking about having the right to vote, having the right to land, having the right to all kinds of things. And Paine was the one person who was giving them those ideas in very clear, simple language. He was very dangerous to the establishment.
I'd like to
He needed Julia to run his campaign.
I'd like to add something, which is, Washington had greatness in many respects, but the Native Americans called him Town Destroyer because of the campaign which he deputized General Sullivan to come through upstate New York and committing massacres of settlements left and right, of the people, the Haudenosaunee, the tribes that lived here, not 10 miles from where I am in upstate New York. As a young man, he put an ad in the paper that said toddlers for sale, something I believe he regretted later in life. But these are criminal acts which our society found it possible to elide over, to forget, not to pay attention to. Thomas Jefferson, who has a magnificent memorial in Washington, was chided by other people who enslaved other humans for being so particularly vengeful, a slave master, so cruel to those who would try to escape from his clutches. And yet, as a society, we're happy to, for the most part, for the last 200 years, to not think much about those crimes and to revere him for his contributions. But what was Thomas Paine's crime? He questioned authority, as Margaret said. He questioned the prevailing cherished beliefs, which is the impulse at the heart of science and everything that we do that helps us know something more of nature and of ourselves. And that's why I'm so moved by what all of you in this group are doing, because it's redressing a wrong that's not just a historical, symbolic wrong. It speaks to our sickness, our blindness. It speaks to the original sin of the country and our inability to recognize it and to accept it and to move forward. And so it's not just a symbolic act, a statue for Thomas Paine. It's recognizing that blindness that we have to overcome.
Beautifully said. Thank you, Anne.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Margaret. Really, thank you.
So just in the interest of time, I'm going to give one final question and then hand the baton back to Margaret to wrap us up. For all of our speakers, what's your favorite thing about Paine, and or what is something that you would like us to go forward knowing about Paine?
My favorite thing is that he couldn't keep his mouth shut. And what I would like people to think of going forward is, I have the line in the play, which I wrote, but I think it's exactly his sentiments, of that one must always speak the truth as one sees it, no matter the consequences. And that would be a very wonderful thing if we all did that. We wouldn't necessarily be saying the same things, but we would be speaking to each other. And that's what he would want.
I loved his promotion of education. I think it's probably one of the major tenets that a surviving country has is when they educate their population, especially the young. And I love this quote from Thomas Paine. One good schoolmaster is of more use than 100 priests. And I just love that, because education is so important to me. And that's why I do those assemblies. And that's what I loved about Tom Paine.
I guess I would say, well, there's so many things about him that are so fantastic, but if I had to choose one, I would say it was that he advocated for what we know of as universal basic income. He thought that if you're born and you're a citizen, you have the rights to certain things, a certain amount, a place to live, a certain minimum amount of income. And it's my belief that this idea of universal basic income, or UBI, is going to, I hope, start taking root, because it really is true. We should be providing for everyone. And I love that he was so ahead of his time on that.
I love that too. And I also love that 200 years before anyone had ever seen our planet from space, he knew that his country was the world. And to me, that is, that's almost like being prophetic in a way, being truly a prophet in seeing beyond what we see here, not supernaturally, completely human, but seeing farther than we see, than his contemporaries saw. And I love the fact that we don't have to make any excuses for him. And when you read his work, you never have to cringe and think, my God, did he really believe that stuff? No, he is someone who was so boldly himself. And he comes from this incredibly ossified class society where class structure is so rigid. It's like the Egyptians or something. It's so completely hopeless. And he dreams of a world where everyone has a shot. And that's the most beautiful thing.
I love how he stood up to authority and power and tried his best to diffuse power, because he saw how dangerous it can be when it gets overly consolidated in any one place, whether that's royalty or whether that be organized religion. So I really think that the work he did in that regard is some of the most important of all time.
That's great.
Yeah. I appreciate him as a humanist, that he, like Protagoras, thought that people were the measure of all things and not some deity. In terms of his deism, before 1859 and Darwin's Origin of Species, many people, like the late 1500s, these Enlightenment figures, thought, well, maybe in a mechanistic way, somebody wound up the universe, then walked away and had nothing to do with humanity anymore, and we were on our own. So he had that. I think perhaps if he had lived after Darwin, he may have had a very different point of view. But I appreciate his humanism.
Along with the courageous anti-slavery stance that I mentioned earlier, as a historian, I just really appreciate how his writings are just an amazing kind of window into the worldview and the lives of people in colonial and revolutionary America, right? You could read somebody like John Adams or James Madison and not really understand what ordinary people in the country were thinking, right? And were doing. That's not the case with Paine. He really, I think, gave voice to people from below and expressed their ideas and their frustrations and their anger very lucidly. So that's what I really appreciate about him.
I wish I had gone to school and had you as my teacher, Christopher Cameron. You're brilliant. Did we have everyone speak, or are we missing?
Yes, we did. So thank you for submitting your questions and then answering the questions. And Margaret, go ahead with the next part.
Okay, well, Thanks everyone for those wonderful questions. Please note that if we did not get to the question that you put into the chat, someone will follow up with you after this event. And you can also plan to stay for the post-event happy hour, a little social time, and you can ask questions of whoever's left. Congressman Jamie Raskin has provided us with a wonderful closing statement that we will be showing in just a moment. After his statement, we will show the credits slide. When viewing the credits, you'll hear Thomas Paine Memorial Association's friend, James Clue, sing a song written by Graham Moore. James is accompanied by Greg Shaw on bass and Eric Stowe on drums. The song, Tom Paine's Bones, was recorded and performed by Dick Guggen, but today James provides us with an upbeat cover of the Moore song, and we're sure you're going to love it. James will also present his song Liberty Tree before we begin our interactive social hour. Toast to the life and work of Thomas Paine are welcomed, as well as any questions or comments. We will return after the songs, and we hope you'll join us. And now we proudly present Congressman Jamie Raskin's closing statement.
Hello to all my friends out there from the Tom Paine Memorial Association, the American Human Association, the Center for Inquiry, Freedom from Religion Foundation, Freethought Society, and the Tom Paine National Historical Association. Tom Paine lovers all, happy birthday, Tom Paine. Thank you for not letting his birthday go unobserved this year. Tom Paine is experiencing a resurgence of popular support as the forces of democracy rally against right-wing authoritarianism and racism and anti-Semitism and all of the irrational forces that have been unleashed in our land and across the globe. So what a great thing to do to get together to observe Tom's birthday. As you know, he wrote Common Sense just 6 months before the American Revolution and the Declaration of Independence were formalized. And it was the single most explosive and incendiary and influential pamphlet in the American Revolution. Common Sense, of course, has a double meaning. It is both the sense that people have without advanced learning. It is those things that are intuitive and second nature to us as thinking sensory beings. But common sense also means the sense we have in common, the sense that we enjoy in democratic society and democratic movements when we're able to talk together, think together, and reason our way through situations. And that's precisely what Tom Paine did with Common Sense, because the pamphlet was all about the necessity of proclaiming independence, independence from monarchy, and independence from the foreign control of the British Parliament. Tom Paine said to us that the king could not govern the people of America, that having a hereditary ruler is as irrational as having a hereditary mathematician or a hereditary teacher, that one does not qualify to rule by virtue of heredity. One qualifies to rule in a democratic society by virtue of persuasion and service to the common good and identification with the values and the interests of the people. And so it made no sense. An island could not govern a continent, said Paine. And so he unveiled these arguments and he injected them into American political discourse, and they had an electrifying effect on the people of the country. So look, democracy is under attack again today, and we've got to remember everything that Tom Paine taught us about the way that democracy is rooted in the equality of human beings, and that the consent of the governed, as Jefferson would put it, is the only legitimate basis for government and for authorizing the agency of government. So it's all got to be rooted in the people themselves, the people ourselves. So thank you for giving me a moment to just reflect on the great and magnificent and infinite legacy that Tom Paine left us. And we have so much more to explore and so much more to talk about. I am working on legislation to authorize the creation of a Tom Paine Memorial, a monument to Tom Paine in Washington. We don't have one that is properly fitting and present for the whole country and the whole world to come and see. And if anybody deserves one who doesn't have one today, surely it's Tom Paine. So I'm going to be fighting for that. I know I'm going to be working with all of you guys. Happy birthday to Tom Paine, and thank you all for being part of the movement to keep the memory and the spirit of Tom Paine alive in our times. And we know it's more necessary now than ever as the democracy has come under attack by the twin forces of irrational superstition and lying and political authoritarianism together. So let's stand up for common sense. Let's stand up for the age of reason. We know you can't have one without the other. We're not going to have common sense rule if we have an age of unreason, and we can't have an age of reason and enlightenment unless we have common sense govern. So thanks to all of you for gathering. Thanks, Tom Paine, and happy birthday to him.
As I dreamed out one evening by the river of discontent, I bumped straight into old Tom Paine. Running down the road he went. He said, "I can't stop now, child. Yeah, King George is after me." He'd held the rope around my throat and hang me on the liberty tree. But I will dance to Tom Paine's bones. Yeah, dance to Tom Paine's bones. Oh, dance in the oldest boots I own to the rhythm of Tom Paine's bones. I only talked about freedom and justice for everyone. But since the very first word I spoke, I've been looking down the barrel of a gun. He said, "I preach revolution. Let me say in my defense that all I did wherever I went was talk a lot of common sense. I will dance to Tom Paine's bones. I will dance to Tom Paine's bones. Dance in the oldest boots I own to the rhythm of Tom Paine's bones. I will dance to Tom Paine's bones. I will dance to Tom Paine's bones. Dance in the oldest boots I own to the rhythm of Tom Paine's bones." Old Tom Paine, he ran so fast, he left me standing still. And there I was, a piece of paper in hand, standing on the top of a hill. He said, "This is the age of reason, but these are the rights of man. Yeah, kick off religion and monarchy. It was written there in Tom Paine's plan. I will dance to Tom Paine's bones. I will dance to Tom Paine's bones. Dance in the oldest boots I own to the rhythm of Tom Paine's bones. nobody cares. But I will dance to Tom Paine's bones. I will dance to Tom Paine's bones. Dancing the oldest boots I own to the rhythm of Tom Paine. I will dance to Tom Paine's bones. Dance to Tom Paine's bones. Dance in the oldest boots I own to the rhythm of Tom Paine's bones. I will dance to Tom Paine's bones. Yeah, dance to Tom Paine's bones. Yeah, dance in the oldest boots I own to the rhythm of Tom Paine's bones. I will dance. I will dance. Dance in the oldest boots I own to the rhythm of Tom Paine's bones. I will dance to Tom Paine's bones. Yeah, dance to Tom Paine's bones. Dance in the oldest boots I own to the rhythm of Tom Paine's bones. In a chariot of light from the regions of day, the goddess of liberty came. 10,000 celestials directed the way, and hither conducted the day. A fair budding branch from the gardens above, where millions with millions agree. She brought in her hand as a pledge of her love, the plant she named Liberty Tree. The celestial exotic struck deep in the ground, like a native it flourished and bore. The fame of its fruit drew the nations around to seek out this peaceable shore. Unmindful of names or distinction they came, for freemen like brothers agreed. With one spirit endued, they one friendship pursued, and the temple was Liberty Tree. Beneath this fair tree, like the patriarchs of old, their bread and contentment they ate, unvexed with the troubles of silver and gold, the cares of the grand and the great. With timber and tar they old England supplied, and supported her power on the sea. Her battles they fought without getting a groat, for the honor of Liberty Tree. But hear, O ye swains, 'tis a tale most profane, how all the tyrannical powers, kings, commons, and lords, are uniting amain to cut down this guardian of ours. From the east to the west, blow the trumpet to all through the land, let the sound of it flee. Let the far and the near all unite with the cheer in defense of our Liberty Tree.
Hi, everyone. Did you enjoy that?
Yes.
I heard you singing along, Zenos.
Oh, I did. I didn't know you could hear me. He was great. You were great.
Oh,
terrific.
Thank you. So I want to welcome everyone to the social hour. If you have your favorite beverage available, please do join us in a toast. You are welcome to unmute and please tell us what you love about Thomas Paine. Give us a favorite Thomas Paine quote. Do a toast to Thomas Paine. Tell us where you are and who you are. and let's just get to know each other better.
Okay. I'd like to say something. Thomas Paine was the founder of America's liberal tradition. And for decades, we've been pounded by conservatives who say that liberalism is Marxism. It comes from Karl Marx, when instead America's liberal tradition comes from the guy who first wrote down the words United States of America for the world to see. And his first chapter, The American Crisis, was read aloud to George Washington's troops before they crossed the Delaware. And as they were charging the Hessians the next morning, they shouted, "These are the times that try men's souls." And Thomas Paine was there, and he was among them, among the Americans with their muskets charging at the Hessians in America's first military victory. And this is their spiritual godfather of America's vision for a better America, for what America should be. And we're still fighting that battle for the dream of what we could be together.
Beautifully said. Thank you.
So here's to Thomas Paine.
My hero.
Anyone else?
Yeah, can I just say something? I'm from Nashville, Tennessee. I love Thomas Paine, and I admire the fact that he had almost a magical knack for escaping death. First in the privateer, when he was a privateer, escaping the disaster on the Terrible from Captain William Death. Later fleeing William Pitt the Younger's censorship campaign. Got out of that one too. And then the jailer's mistake in Luxembourg prison. He was almost a wizard of sorts. So cheers to that.
He was also shot at by the guy who was running New Rochelle for him. Like this really quite late in his life, this disgruntled employee fired a pistol through his window on New Year's Eve, which is just absolutely crazy. As you say, he was like this sort of magical figure who never ever seemed to, death never caught up with him, and it did it until the end.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Hello?
So I would point out that Paul has done an amazing graphic novel biography of Thomas Paine on Thomas Paine's Bones, and if you haven't looked at it, give it a look.
Thank you very much.
I just want to say everybody should watch Ian's play. It's unbelievable, and it's heartbreaking and so incredible. And it really gives a lot of, it brings the man alive. Bravo, Ian.
Just downloaded it. Can't wait to see it.
I see that we've got Ken, Dick,
Yes.
and Andreas with their hands raised. So I want to make sure that they get in there.
Yeah. Hi there. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Hi. Yeah. Hi. My name is Ken Granderson, and Margaret and I have met once, maybe twice over the years. I'm in Brooklyn, New York, and I loved learning so much more about Tom Paine. He's been one of my favorite historical figures for many years because we happen to share a birthday. So him and Oprah, I love to say, yeah, we share a birthday. And I've been a lifelong humanist, and actually last year joined the board of directors of the Harvard and MIT Humanist Chaplaincy. So, that in some way, maybe I'm helping, follow in his footsteps. Yeah.
Happy birthday, Ken.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Happy birthday.
We toast to you. I think I have a picture of you at Marie's Crisis Cafe.
I'm not sure where. I think we may have met, I don't know, in DC. Who knows? You've been at the forefront since forever. So thank you.
Well, congratulations on your humanist assignment. And I'm sure you'll do a marvelous job.
You're gonna go out? No? Yeah, because it's so dark out there now.
Dick Holdstuck, and then I've
Yes,
got,
hello.
I see Andreas and Graham.
I'm Dick Holdstuck, and I've been around long time as a folk singer in America, singing mostly traditional British folk songs. And recently, last summer, I put out a book. It was called Again with One Voice. The third chapter of this book is all about Tom Paine and what he did when he went back to England and helped us to try to get the English working class people the chance to vote. And I know that everything I've heard today really tells me about my book. And I don't want to talk a lot about Paine because you probably know as much, different things about Paine than I do. And we were really glad to have him come back to England. And the aristocracy at the end finally decided to make everything he did or said, including the writing of the rights of man, illegal. So he had to skip the country and went to France and was very well received and became a member of the French government at first, and then there were problems later. But wonderful day. Thank you so much. And keep in mind this book. It's hard to sell books nowadays, but it's there. You can get it anywhere for your library. Again with One Voice. Thanks.
I had one question that I always wondered. There's the story that the jailer made a mistake, and there's a story that he had influential friends who helped cause that mistake. Can anybody fill me in on what they think is the truth about that?
I like the story about the chalk mart best. But we are researching deeply into the works of Thomas Paine and memoirs and so forth. So I'm sure many more things will be uncovered by our wonderful board member, Gary Burton.
Problem here.
I did quite a lot of research when I was writing the play, and there is no definitive answer to that question. I think it's quite possible that a influential friend organized the wiping away of the cross, or the cross that was on the door. That I think that definitely happened. They were down to be taken to trial the next day. For some reason that was wiped off. I mean, so it wasn't wiped. It was the fact that the door. Well, we don't know. The story is that the door was open and it was put on the inside of the door. The door was closed, and then it was not seen by the guards. So I don't think I've read a lot of biographies. I haven't found the definitive answer yet. But yeah, as Margaret says, it's one of those slight mysteries. Don't know. Yep.
I would think about. Can I say something?
Oh yes, Sinners, please.
Well, I just think I'm speculating. Both can be true. That they had the chalk mark, and the people who regularly picked up victims knew the difference between the door being open and closed, and that he had influential friends that just kind of allowed that to happen and let the angel of death pass by. So I think both can be likely.
The story of Passover.
Yes, kind of a secular Passover.
It's hard to believe a guard would be that stupid, really.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe the guard themselves was. I mean, the idea that they wouldn't notice that the door was open and flush against the wall is and I think it's only Paine who says this. Other sources.
Paul, please introduce yourself. I'm so happy to see you. Thank you for joining in.
So yeah, I'm Paul. I'm a graphic novelist in Manchester, England, which is where Tom Paine's bones were supposed to arrive when Cobbett dug him up and was due to bring him back to England. And yeah, I've been fascinated with him for ages. I'm currently finishing a graphic. I'm literally working on it during this talk. I've got so little time left, but I'm finishing a graphic novel of his life. It's something that I specialize in is forgotten history, but also I specialize in graphic novels that are constructed purely from the words of the time. So everything is verbatim and doesn't have any fictional words whatsoever. It's got quite a strange flamboyant style to it visually, but hopefully people will like that. But yeah, researching this story about the door, I found it hard to believe that a guard wouldn't notice that. So I wonder perhaps if the guard was actually quite sympathetic to Paine, because I mean he was a hero until he fell foul of these almost.
Paul, do you have any drawings that you can hold up to the camera so we can see what you're working on?
If you can give me share screen, I could throw a couple.
I don't think I can do that. I don't think Emily is still here, but
I just made Paul a co-host, and I'm actually going to make you host, Margaret, so you have complete power.
Oh boy, I have superpower.
Okay, let's give this a go then. Fan view. Well, slideshow. You guys are going to have to tell me whether this is working or not.
We see it.
Can you see anything?
Yes. Oh.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah. So it's called Tom Paine's Bones, obviously, because of the thing that his bones were dug up and brought back to England and then vanished, and hopefully spread around the world, much like his ideas did. As you can see, the idea of him being haunted by death is contained in this cover. But also, you know, I said earlier that it's going to be absolutely accurate. There's no fictional words in it of any kind whatsoever. And I've done my best to treble check every fact. And I think Gary Burton's going to have a look at it as well to make sure I've not made any mistakes. But visually, the style is going to be quite extravagant and fantastical. Because his life story was just so amazing. I thought it was a appropriate visual style to go for. Here's him actually being dug up from New Rochelle by a very strange English radical called Cobbett, William Cobbett, who used to castigate Paine in public and became a sudden convert. And like a lot of converts, become quite deranged, don't they? Who previously disliked somebody and have suddenly seen the light, become a bit fanatical. And yeah, he committed what could well be an act of desecration. And this is the image of doing it. The idea that he actually dug the bones up himself is absurd as well. They got a guy who was an ex-slave to actually do the work. So Cobbett's claim to have actually dug them up himself is spurious. So here's Paine when he first arrives in Paris, and there's kind of a bit of a crowd frenzy moment where the king who'd fled and had been rearrested has been captured again and brought back into Paris, and there's this big public event. It's a big kind of a revolutionary moment that the king's returning, but the crowd noticed that Paine doesn't have no, what's the name of these rosettes? There's a particular term, isn't there?
Pillars.
Yeah, thanks. He's not wearing money, you know. He as one of his biographers said, he wasn't, wasn't really brought up in the tradition of these symbols, and he's nearly lynched. This is another one of his escapes from death. He's nearly lynched. Paris street from a lamppost by basically a gang of crazed revolutionaries, because I mean a lot of the criticisms of how excessive the French Revolution was compared to the American Revolution are perfectly legitimate. So yeah, that's another one of his escapes from death. Absolutely extraordinary. Here's him writing Age of Reason, or at least parts of Age of Reason in jail in Paris. And again, this kind of surreal ghost that's been following him around that you saw on the cover is there with him. This really is to try and sort of get across his love of science. This is illustrating his time in London when he became engaged with loads of astronomers, and it's when he, being a working class man, participating in the Enlightenment, deep curiosity, absolute love of science. Really trying to sum that up here. Plus his quote about, you know, my country is the world. I thought this, I hope this really kind of sums up that sort of flavor. And last image is, this is, somebody was asking earlier about whether he actually had any duels or not. Apparently he did actually have a duel on this boat with one of the, I think these things were just like playground shows. It didn't mean you were, dueling to the death. You were just like men settling arguments. But this is another one of his escapes from death. The boat that he went on, the Alliance, to go to France to try and collect more funds for the struggling American War of Independence, ended up in the middle of this field of icebergs in a storm with its sails torn apart and one of the masts damaged. And these guys were trying to push the iceberg, or rather trying to push the boat away from the iceberg with great big poles. Another really close scrape with death. And I presume you can all see this ghost haunting him in the iceberg. So yeah, that's what I'm working on at the moment. I've got 6.5 pages left to finish. It was a crowdfunded project because I just couldn't get anybody to publish it. I'm relatively well known in England, but no publisher would handle this, which I thought was really interesting. The way Thomas.
Well, Paul, maybe my coloring book will be neck and neck with your publication.
Okay, we can have a race.
Well, those are beautiful illustrations. And I want to highlight someone else who has a raised hand here. Would like to speak?
I have a raised hand if I can chime in here.
John?
Yes. What a thrill to be. Can you hear me all?
We can hear you, but I'm trying to, can you stop share screen, Paul?
That's what I'm trying to do now.
Okay. And thank you so much for being here, Paul. You're just fantastic.
Sorry, I'm really struggling to how to get rid of it.
Technology.
Sorry, how does one raise a hand?
Oh, sorry. Is anybody else able to disable that for me?
No. But
can you minimize your window?
At the top of your screen, you should have a stop shared screen.
Oh, I see now. Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah.
There you go.
Sorry about that. That wasn't deliberate. I swear that wasn't.
Wow, Paul, that's extraordinary. And why is it that we have to wait for a Brit like you to honor one of ours on this side of the Atlantic? So I'm a composer, and I got very interested in the revolution about 4 or 5 years ago, and I started to compose a musical, and it's called The Crossing and the 10 Crucial Days, and Thomas Paine gets the very first word in the show. And we've been working with Gary Burton to make sure, like you, we get everything accurate. And I'm very grateful to the Thomas Paine Memorial Cottage and Susan Tanswell over there. They've been incredibly supportive. And I'm so excited to know that, there are more than just a handful of people, because when I go to the Thomas Paine Memorial Cottage and I watch a lecture, there's usually 3 or 4 of us. But I guess, with this Zoom format, we can bring people from all over the world. But I just wanted to share that my reason for writing this musical is exactly why I'm feeling, or what I'm feeling from everybody here, that it's more relevant today, or as relevant today as it was back then. And when I started to really get into the research, and I'm a slow reader, so for me to read like a dozen books in the Revolution is a real gargantuan effort. But I just realized that we need this same spirit of all in and working together, everybody, top and bottom, to really make this new world that I feel is possible, but far from inevitable. And that's why I feel like Thomas Paine, and he's, by the way, he's grown in our show and stature because of, in part because of what, Gary Burton has shown us. And I'll just say one more thing about it because I'm not here to plug myself, but we did a presentation for the Juneteenth celebration this year, which was the first official Juneteenth celebration because we have some African-American characters in our show, also historically based, and we actually had them singing at the Thomas Paine Cottage, actually at the Thomas Paine Museum, where Gary was spending a lot of time at. And it was very well received, and I was very honored to be there. And, so we're just taking this step by step. But our goal is to be on Broadway by 2026 and compete with Hamilton. But if not, at least to bring this to the attention of a lot of people, because, theater is a way to reach the masses. And, we're doing it in a way that I think really honors, Paine and not exploits him. So I'm just, very happy to be in this group of really distinguished individuals. Thank you.
John, I was there on Juneteenth and I saw the performance. It was spectacular. I would like to ask all the people who they have their hands raised or they're participating in the social hour to mute until I call upon them. But John, thank you so much for all the work you've done, and your play is fantastic. I'm just thrilled.
Thank you. I appreciate that. We're not going to stop.
All right. We'll see you at the next Juneteenth, right? Okay. So I'm going to call on Graham and Barbara Dean. They've had their hand raised for quite a while. If you could unmute.
Well, we went to England in 2009. I'm sorry we were not able to see Ian's play there, but we had seen it in this country. This is a, I don't know who made it.
This is commissioned by the Harvey's Brewery in Lewis. There's only 1,000 of these made. And this is the Tom Paine jug. I have number 11. Celebrates the bicentenary. And Ian, I do have to say, I was so thrilled to see all those pictures because I consider what we did in 2009 a pilgrimage. And we went to all of those sites that you mentioned. And it was just totally wonderful to be there at that point in time, celebrating the 200th anniversary of Tom Paine's death. And he is still revered by some
in England,
by some, not by all. The other one thing that I
well, there's other things to show them.
Oh yeah, show them that. I want to get something else in a minute. Show them this too.
So this is the booklet of our one CD that Graham and I have made. It's quite a while ago, but it was to honor Tom Paine. It was during the Iraq War. So they're mostly anti-war songs, but we do sing Here's to Tom Paine by Steve Tilston, which is a song that we totally love. And I wanted to also point out, I don't know if you can see this. This was a sign that was in, I guess, the DC area. It's because Jamie Raskin, Thomas Paine, is one of Jamie Raskin's heroes, and he named his son Tommy after Thomas Paine. Very sorry to hear that Tommy did take his own life, but it's very important that we have a congressman who knows Tom Paine's worth. Oh, here was something else from Harvey's, Thomas Paine
This
Ale.
is Harvey's Brewery in Lewis did a special commemoration, 200th anniversary Tom Paine Ale, which I was very proud to drink, and I made sure I
Kept all the bottles.
a few bottles, which I treasure.
Yeah, we went to Thetford where he was born, and I took a kind of a stone from what was probably his birthplace, even though that's probably not standing anymore. So we got a lot of, souvenirs from this amazing trip. And actually then in New York City, this bicentennial was also celebrated, and they called call it Thomas Paine Park, which used to be called something else. And Bill Moyers and his program were there, and they got a few seconds of us, Graham and I, singing some of our songs that we sang at that celebration. So I don't know if you can still see that.
Yeah.
But Jamie Raskin, he's my hero, and keep an eye on him.
Well, we are talking to you about participating in the 2022 Thomas Paine Juneteenth event. And I look forward to getting to know you better. And thank you so much for joining us tonight. Really a pleasure to meet you via Zoom. And we're going to go to the next hand raise, which is Emily Wilson. And she has been waiting a long time. Hi, Emily.
Hi. I just wanted to say what I love most about Thomas Paine is how he was hardly a product of his time compared to his other peers. I know when we talk about older historical figures, we talk about how we had like introduced new bright ideas, yet had some faults that were understandably like a source of the product times. But with Thomas, he was one special exception. He was like one of the earliest critics against slavery. He supported funded welfare. And if I heard right during the program, he was like one of like the earliest supporters for like women's suffrage, if I'm right. And I think Thomas in the 18th century sense was like one of the earliest progressives.
Thank you, Emily. Yes, you're right. He was so progressive and so ahead of his time. And that's what we love about him. And thank you so much for coming to this event. You are one of the major organizers of Human Light.
Yes.
And I wanted to tell everyone that it is a humanist winter holiday event. And Emily Wilson provides us with some stimulating DIY, do-it-yourself projects. And thank you for attending, Emily.
Yeah.
And now I see David Carter has his hand raised. Okay.
Thank you so much. I'll try to be brief here, but thank you all for doing this and participating in this, because it's so wonderful to learn more about Thomas Paine. I'm Dave Carter. I'm calling in or zooming in from Alaska. So we've got England and Alaska. So we're all over. And but yeah, I mean, I'm a retired attorney. I kind of got tied into this through the Freedom from Religion Foundation and the Center for Inquiry types, the skeptics and the lawyers and what's going on in our country and whatnot. But we all seem to have a common purpose, which is certainly enhanced by people learning a lot more about Mr. Paine. And so I'm really glad that you folks are focusing on what he did, and he has been written out of the history books, as you noted, and so that needs to change. And it looks like that's one of the things that you're trying to do. So I won't drone on. I just really do appreciate the work that you've been doing and that you are doing. Thank you.
Margaret, you're muted.
Yeah, I couldn't hear you.
Oh, sorry about that. Victor, I can't tell what your last name is, Victor, but please go ahead and unmute yourself and join in the conversation.
Victor Madison. I'm the vice president of Thomas Paine Friends. The front of my website, the first page is Thomas Paine, and there's a list of why we should care about Thomas Paine. It's been there for like 15 years. The website is valorww2.com, WW Arabic number 2, not Roman number 2. I'm a publisher. I've done over a dozen books on World War II. In the next year, I'll be trying to connect the dots between common sense and the 4 freedoms. And there's a very close connection. And I think after World War II, we lost that connection. We went from the greatest generation to the lamest generation. And I've been doing emails twice a month for the last 10 years. I'm a veteran. My top concern is the suicide rate with veterans. 65,000 have committed suicide since 2010. Even one a day is too many, but that's my main focus. I see a link between freedom from fear and veterans getting involved. Thomas Paine was, of course, a combat veteran of both the Army and the Navy. He was a privateer in the British Navy. So I think that's one connection. Let me dispel one piece of wrong information about Thomas Paine, which both Chris Hedges and Professor Bell, who were both on C-SPAN talking about Thomas Paine, got wrong. He did not die in poverty. He had a lot of money, relatively speaking, and that money was used to support the Bonneville family. And in effect, his godson, Nicholas Bonneville, went to West Point and lived long enough to become a Western explorer and a general, even in the Civil War. And the reason he is kept down and ignored and denigrated is because this country is not a republic. It's certainly not a democracy. It is an oligarchy. And the oligarchs fear what he had to say then and now.
Comments in?
So let me give you the solution. If everything goes well as to what I hope might happen in 5 years, to have business plans and everything, I would like to see at least 5 people in each congressional district, autonomous, doing their outreach in that district, 1 representing each of the 4 freedoms. You can look them up. By the way, they are on the Victory Medal of World War II. 15 million copies were awarded, the 4 freedoms. In addition to 1 person for each of the 4 freedoms, 1 for the United Nations. There was this book, Thomas Paine, In Search of the Common Good, which was pretty much sponsored by the United Nations. So I think you might consider organizing along those lines. What have you got to lose? What have you got to lose? One concern I do have, however, he was a deist. He was not a free thinker. He was not an atheist. He was a deist. So was Ben Franklin. So was Thomas Jefferson. There are 78 emblems of belief that you can get on your gravestone if you're a veteran, a national organization. 78. Half of them are non-Christian. There is still not one for deism. So they've eliminated freedom of worship. You still cannot get a deist symbol on your gravestone if you die. So that's another thing I'm working on. But this was great, fantastic. I hope I'm going to get you the check today, but you've done a tremendous job. Thank you for all you do. Thank you.
Thank you, Victor. And I want to just specify that we do recognize that Thomas Paine was a deist, and that deism indicates that God speaks through nature, that nature's God actually appears in the Declaration of Independence. And we as atheists acknowledge that tremendously. Thomas Paine, however, we consider a free thinker. He was against the norms of his time. And we also acknowledge that Thomas Paine was a veteran. He served in the Revolutionary War. He did his duty tremendously by his pen did more work than his musket, 1,000 muskets could do. But we understand where you're coming from, and we are very aware that we will not promote atheism. We promote his deism. In fact, it's very important, Victor, that in the time of talking about climate problems and restoring the earth, deism is very much a philosophy that we would like to encourage people to adopt, because nature cannot be replaced. The nature that we see around us is in deism God's language.
We're on the same side, and I'm not a religious person, but over the year I do 2 emails a month. The next one is going to be on 1 February, which happens to be Freedom Day. Check it out. Yeah. That was a ceremony
what's your email address
by
again?
Truman in Philadelphia. But thanks for all you do.
Could you put your email address in the chat?
It's VM Valor or Valor VM, either one, at yahoo.com. Valor is my publishing company. VM are my initials. VM Valor at yahoo.com or Valor VM at yahoo.com. And I do like 2,000 per month.
So we have another hand raised. David Carter, you're the next in line. And thank you, Victor.
Thank you. Thank you.
Actually, you need to remove my hand. I already have chatted a little bit. So the next person in line. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. And that would be Steve Gulick or Gulick. I'm friends with Steve, and I can't remember how to pronounce your last name.
Well, nobody can. I recently learned, I'm sorry, this is a total aside, but I love language, and I speak a couple of languages, which Thomas Paine never managed to achieve, which I play with. I impersonate Thomas Paine fairly often. And in fact, Margaret has had me for several of the events that she mentioned earlier, the Thomas Paine Elementary School in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, and so on. And I make fun of a little bit of Thomas Paine's inability to speak any other language besides English. Although, interestingly enough, in his writings that he did in France, he puts in some French phrases. So it wasn't that he didn't care about other languages. He just, as far as I can tell, he had no talent for learning other languages. I mean, he learned English because that was what he spoke, as a child. Anyway, the main thing I wanted to say is that I think that Thomas Paine is important enough, and I agree with Ian, who said he wanted to bring Thomas Paine in effect back to life. And that has always been my goal, performing Thomas Paine, which I started doing in the 90s, 1990s, not the 1890s. And what I love recreating about Paine is I've tried really hard to reconstruct a Thetford accent from the mid 1700s. I care about language, and I wanted to do it as close as I could to what Thomas Paine might have sounded like. And I'm a singer, so I love singing the various songs. And I'll leave you with my favorite of the ones that I've done, especially with children, which is, of course, the one about John Crow. Here lies the body of John Crow, who once was high but now is low. Ye brother crows, take warning all, for as ye rise, so much ye fall. And I'll leave you with that.
Thank you, Steve. It was so great to see you again.
And great to see you, Margaret.
So I see we have a hand raised from Francis Chu. You'll need to unmute, Francis.
Hello, Margaret. Can you hear me?
Yes, so nice to see you.
So nice to see you too. And thank you for hosting this wonderful event, you and Gary. And I can't believe we have 400 people and was it $14,000 in donations, which is excellent. I just wanted to say a little bit about how I got interested in Thomas Paine. I was doing graduate study on William Blake originally, and gotten into Thomas Paine sort of through the side door. And I thought, wow, at first I wasn't really too keen about having to read Thomas Paine because I always associated him with, Ronald Reagan and thinking about that they must have had the similar philosophy. But the more I read of Thomas Paine, the more I thought, oh my God, how on earth did Ronald Reagan ever really appreciate Thomas Paine? So, the more I read, I thought, oh, wow, look at this. This man was advocating, the first one to really advocate an end to hereditary government, to talk about public welfare, to give money to the poor, I think the bottom 30% at that time, and for the elderly, to have like a really nationalized program to give money to young couples. I thought this was just really amazing. How it's, how did he think of it back then? And then I read, I think it was John Keene's biography sometime later, and didn't realize that, Thomas Paine was a veteran, just like, back Victor Madison just pointed out. I didn't realize that he had given away all his donation, all the, the proceeds from the common sense of the army, and given away the rights to the rights of man. I thought this is just completely amazing, and yet he is so ignored. I mean, I admit I cried when I finished reading John Keene's biography. I've got to teach a course on Thomas Paine, and so I did that at the New York School. I taught for about maybe like 3 years or so, and just really found it very enjoyable. It was interesting because like a lot of the students had never really heard of Thomas Paine either. So I think it is so great that you're trying to promote him as much as possible. So after doing a lot of this teaching and whatnot, I finally decided I've got to go write a book on Thomas Paine. And at that time, Harvey K had recommended and recommended that I write this book for, I think it was Routledge at that time. So it took me about 4 or 5 years, juggling with my mother's death and taking care of my father. But anyway, when I wrote this book,
it's up as high as it can go.
Oops. Can you see it? Anyway, so when I was writing this, I wanted to talk about the history of rights, and I wanted to talk about, the age of reform in Britain, because this is when they were just beginning to talk about, abolishing slavery, and they were supporting the American colonists, and talking about, at that time it was a manhood suffrage. And I wanted to see how Thomas Paine really related to, to the rest of them. How radical was Paine? And in many ways, he did adopt some of the ideas, mentioned by people like Adam Smith, Sir John Sinclair, James Murray, but it was really Thomas Paine who pushed everything to say, the 300, to the greatest extent possible at that time. And I think this is why he was so hated and dreaded by the government, because he was really the first one to, to really call things out by the proper name and to really sort of give the boot to the aristocracy and to the, what you call the top 1% of his day. And he really was he really was the most, I think, outrageous thinker back then. And that's why I think, he was really kept underground for the next at least 100 years or so, or probably, possibly even up to the 1960s.
Well, Francis, you wrote this wonderful book that I'm just now getting through it. And it is a fantastic dissertation about the rights of man. So I would highly recommend that Tom Paine lovers seek this book and learn more about what you wrote concerning Thomas Paine. So thank you, Francis, for coming to this event and being part of it. And we look forward to working with you in the future.
Well, thank you for hosting this, Margaret, and really disseminating Thomas Paine's words.
Oh, thank you. Let's see who the next people are that had their hand raised for so long. I see a person named Thomas Paine. I don't know.
Oh, good gosh, I guess that means me. Yeah, I mean, what did I do to deserve that? But I would, in fact, I was born in 1948, and my father had been reading Joseph Lewis and basically was buying into the notion that, hey, this is the guy that actually wrote the first draft of the Declaration. And so he named me Tom Paine. And I've been trying to live up. In fact, when I met my wife almost 50 years now, the first thing she said to me was, "Oh, so your name's Tom Paine. So do you have any common sense?" And I've been trying to prove to her ever since that I have a little, but clearly not enough. But I grew up in a household that, with a copy of Common Sense with the word pain written on it by another guy named Robert Treat Paine, who's a direct forebear. So I mean, what's that all about? Anyway, enough about me. 5 years ago, Ian Ruskin was performing at Faneuil Hall, and for some reason, because I was in the room, I got to say something. Ian, do you remember what it was? But anyway, before he got on the stage and did his performance, I was in there. That was the only time I've ever been asked to speak at Faneuil Hall, so that was fun. But he means a lot to me as a landscape architect who believes in sustainability. His early advocacy of agrarian rights, environmental equity, and social equity and abolition, all of it is just how can it not speak to us? And so I'm trying to live up to my name, and I'm doing some writing now, but enough about me. But it's just an honor to be here, and so a toast to this organization for resurrecting in such grand style and adhering to the memory of our unrecognized, truly founding father. So to him.
Well, thank you so much. That was beautiful. Agrarian Justice is one of my favorite works of Thomas Paine. And you're so right. And when he talks about every citizen, he means the indigenous people. He means the slaves. He means everyone. And we just don't know about these intricate meanings behind his work. So your name is wonderful. Thank you. I really appreciate you being here.
Thank you very much.
Let's see who else is on the raise hand. Let's see. Judah Fraid. Can you unmute yourself?
I'm calling from Denver.
Oh, wonderful. Denver, Colorado. My sister lives there.
Oh, really? Well, that's cool. Might connect. So first, a shout out to Paul for his new graphic work, because I think his bringing the fantastic to the reality of Thomas Paine can help popularize him. And it's thrilling to see him in this forum. Also, a big shout out to my own friend, Steve Gulick. And if I'm still not saying it right yet, Steve, I apologize. But Steve blessed me in 2007 by appearing on a panel that I did in the library company in Philadelphia for the anniversary of Common Sense, which was, we had like several other people there. And this was for a book that I had going on then called Mobile Sense, based on Common Sense. And all these years later, after surviving cancer, I've totally rewritten that book, which I wasn't going to hold it up, but since people are holding things up, I'm going to briefly. But this is the book. It vanishes there.
It's still vanishing. I think when you have a background, it does that.
That's okay. Maybe I can get rid of my background and try it again, but oops. That's exactly how I wanted to do. It's not worth promoting. It's called Making Global Sense.
Okay.
And it's based on the structure and logic of common sense and arguing that instead of arguing against monarchy and hereditary succession, it's updated to arguing against what I call authority addiction, alpha male rule. And the replacement of that is what I'm calling mindful self-rule and personal democracy. It doesn't matter what the label is, we get to that. But I'm saying that if we're aware that we're all globally interconnected and feel and sense our oneness, that old ancient deist notion, that we'll behave more mindfully and carefully with each other. And that's the hope will help us deal with things like climate change and rising authoritarian governments. And so my hope is the book's now out, and after all these years, and I'm hoping that it'll do some good. But I'm mainly just thrilled to see this many people who care about what this man did and his ideas. And I'm hoping that if we get enough people tuning into the 18th century Enlightenment, it can help 21st century Enlightenment. And that's really what I'm here to celebrate. And so that's all I got.
Thank you, Judah. And climate control is really an important part of Thomas Paine's philosophy, in that he viewed the natural world as the language of God. And, how better can we bridge the gap between non-theists and theists than viewing the world as a natural place that deserves to be protected and honored. So we have someone who's been waiting, Christine Grassman. Can you speak? And
hello, everyone. I just wanted to say that this was a very bittersweet celebration for me, because I am a recent New York transplant to Virginia, and right now I don't feel comfortable visiting New York, but I am astounded and upset that I did not know about the Grove Street. Otherwise, I would have spent a lot of time there. And as a blind person, I would have loved to ask to see the wooden carving, the etching. So I plan, when things calm down, to get to New York and check that out. I just wanted, I was also just so thrilled. So many of the people that I've admired and followed over, the decade plus, a few of them several decades, were here today. And that always gives me a feeling of comfort, especially with everything going on around the country now. I sort of feel like we always take 2 steps forward and then 1 step back. There's all label of dismissing progressives now are called socialists and communists and get canceled and all the rest of it. And it just feels like we're always treading water and never quite get to closer to those ideals that Tom Paine talked about. And so today, Dan Barker and Andrew Yin and Margaret Downey and all of these people, John Delancey's statement, all these people that I've admired for so long, it always gives me a sort of like an intellectual embrace when I come to things like this. It just makes me feel a lot better. And I just want people to know that I was inspired as I was listening to everything to pop out a poem about Thomas Paine that I did post to FFRF. So if anybody wants to check that out, I did post that earlier today on Facebook. And I just wanted to say how much I enjoy this. I'm really hoping that this statue is done. And I also hope that whatever is done, especially the graphic novel, I hope that blind folks will be kept in mind, and that there will be audio descriptions or something of that nature, so that anything going forward can be fully accessible. Thank you.
Oh, that's a wonderful recommendation. Thank you, Christine. It was just terrific
Oh,
advice.
and real quick, as I was feeding my cat, I thought to myself as I was listening to all the ways that Thomas Paine avoided death, I was just thinking to myself, you know, if I believed in reincarnation, I would think he might come back as a cat. And then, you know, maybe I could take care of him. But, you know.
That's great. That's great. Well, you know, he liked to try to herd cats.
That's true. An impossible thing.
Right. Well, not really. Cats just don't like to be heard.
That's right. That's right. That's
So,
why I love them.
We're going to open the floor to anyone else who hasn't raised their hand, because that's the only way I can tell if anyone wants to be in a queue. And I don't see any more. So perhaps it's time to say goodnight.
Hi, Geraldine Kaplan. I just wanted to say that I'm from New Rochelle, New York, and I'm currently on the advisory committee for Thomas Paine, the Thomas Paine Cottage and Thomas Paine Memorial Building in New Rochelle. And we're very happy to see the international recognition of Thomas Paine and national recognition. And we're thrilled to be part of this and also to be supporting the maintenance of the Thomas Paine Memorial Building and the programs at the Thomas Paine Cottage. And thank you for doing this show and in enhancing, promoting Thomas Paine.
The statue of New Rochelle.
And the city of New Rochelle is restoring a statue to Thomas Paine.
A statue or a monument?
Sorry, a monument to Thomas Paine.
Yes.
So we're very happy to be part of this whole effort, and thank you for doing this.
Oh, yes. And I want to tell everyone in attendance that we are planning a 2022 Juneteenth event, which will feature activities at the Thomas Paine Cottage, as well as the museum. And we're working very hard to bring together speakers and people to work the tents that will be on the grounds of the Thomas Paine Cottage. And it's going to be a festival of Thomas Paine. I will be working a tent dedicated to Madame Bonneville, and we'll be not only hosting people who are interested in that connection, but I plan to have a game for children and here's the French connection, a silhouette artist. So we're very excited about that.
That sounds great. I just wanted to add that we were in support of the memorial building being locally landmarked to preserve it forever.
Good.
And help to maintain it. But thank you.
And didn't Thomas Edison do the first shovel?
The first spade of dirt. Yes, he did.
Yes.
That's
And
great building too.
And Robert Ingersoll gave a speech on the grounds of that museum. The freethinkers love Thomas Paine for so many reasons, but we look forward to spending our time with you June 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th.
That'll be great to look forward to.
In New Rochelle, New York. So please watch for information regarding those festivities.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here. So if everybody has asked questions and anyone else have remarks or anything they would like to say, I will end this particular
Hello,
Zoom in a few minutes.
Can you hear me?
Who's calling?
This is Helen. I'm on the phone. I'm blind. I'm on an old-fashioned landline. Okay.
Oh, okay.
And I've raised my hand a few times, but I guess it doesn't come up on your thing.
Well,
I'd just like to-
welcome. Thank you for coming to our event.
I would just like to quickly say, yes, I am blind, and it's very hard for me to do any of these because I can't do them through a computer. I can only do them through an old-fashioned landline. And I'd like to thank the lady for bringing that up. thank you, thank you, thank you for describing any and all parts of the slideshows. We have no clue what's going on most of the time. And please, everybody that does these, just format these like an old-fashioned radio show where you're on the radio and everybody's listening. If you format them like that, it will be wonderful. And when you archive these, please add transcription for our screen readers.
Oh, what great advice. Thank you so much. We
Thank
will
you.
make sure to note that, and I hope you enjoyed the event.
Margaret, I just want to say thank you. You are an Amazon. You are a warrior. And I so appreciate everything you've been doing. And this was fantastic tonight. I learned so much. And now I'm going to go off and read and watch Ian's play.
Is that Susan?
Yeah, Sue Kocher. Yep.
Oh, hi, Sue.
Hi, Margaret.
You are such a wonderful advocate for free thought, and you have a board position with the Freedom from Religion Foundation.
Yes.
And you hosted me once as a speaker in your area.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. You and Todd are my heroes.
Oh, yeah.
And Lori and Dan and, all the crowd. But yes, thank you so much for doing this. It was really wonderful.
Oh, I'm so glad you enjoyed it. And it was great to see you, even though it's long distance. Big hugs. There you go.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you. Anyone else have last thoughts? Okay. I don't see any raised hands. And so I'm going to say,
Margaret, Chevy is raising his hand.
Chevy, how are you?
Hi, Chevy from South Hadley. I want to say to Christine, I'm coming back as a Himalayan and I'll meet her at the Crisis Cafe. So my take on pain, and I've watched a couple of videos today, and I have my Google alerts ready for the past week of Tom Paine ready. Courage. He was absolutely courageous. He never did anything by half measures. All in. Thank you.
Yes, you are so right, Chevy. And that's why I relate to him. I have been the victim of death threats and hate mail just because I am who I am. And I get great solace from the words of Thomas Paine. And you're so right. It takes so much out of a person to stand up for what's against the norm of society. And thanks for recognizing that. We're going to honor Thomas Paine's life and work soon. And please don't forget to donate with the triple match donation from the Stiefel Freethought Foundation. It's good until midnight tonight. All right, everyone, I'm going to say good night and thank you, everyone, for attending and contributing. And I just really appreciate all your support.
Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you. Is it Carly?
It is Carly in Denver.
All right. All right. Well, take care of yourself, everyone, and get vaccinated and wear your masks.
Stay healthy, everyone. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Inspiring and heartening.
Oh, good. Thank you. Bye-bye. Oh, Stephen. Hi.
Hi, Margaret. How are you?
I saw you. Oh my goodness, there's so many people I missed. There's like 400 people involved
okay.
in the Zoom, and I didn't see everybody.
That's okay.
All right, glad to see you. And look at your beautiful kitty cat.
Yeah, he wants attention. Thank you.
Don't we all?
Yeah.
Hey, Margaret, Emil, and Kathleen here.
Hi, Emil. Hi, Karen.
We were
Nice
in
to
Philadelphia
see you.
nice to see you. Wonderful program. We were in Philadelphia for the American Humanist Association conference and went on your Tom Paine walk, and that was just wonderful.
Yeah, we really enjoyed that a lot.
Thank you so much. I enjoyed doing it, even though there were little, glicks here and there. But
yeah, I grew up in Philadelphia and was a kid during the bicentennial. And there was nothing about Tom Paine really
Right.
mentioned.
Well, we changed all that. And I just got word today that the Thomas Paine place is now going to be a main thoroughfare to access a huge condominium complex. So they've torn down a lot of the area in that off of 3rd Street. So I don't know if the theater is still operable, but there is this high rise planned. So we're so glad that, you know, there's going to be a lot more traffic on Tom Paine Place.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
I'm putting a link in the chat to the Lewis Pound website, which shows currency with Thomas Paine's face on it from Lewis, England.
Oh, I know. I have a friend there who was supposed to send me the just one of those bills, and I've been waiting for 2 years. But someday I hope to visit there myself.
Well, thank you for a lovely program. Good to see you.
Oh, I'm so glad you were here. Thanks for coming. Bye-bye. Gary, are you still here, Gary? Oh, okay. Gary,
It's on mute.
unmute yourself. Unmute yourself.
Now it's unmuted.
Whoa! Hi, Gary.
Hello, how are you doing? You're doing great. I can tell by looking at you. It was a great program. I enjoyed it immensely. I missed the first 20 minutes or so because I forgot. And I thought the rest of it was great. Thank you for doing it.
That's okay. How's Becky?
She was here a minute ago. She just went to go do tax work. But she got to see most of it.
And how's your beautiful daughter?
Our beautiful daughter is fantastic. She's in love. She's away on an ocean cruise with her new beau and his family. And she's getting ready to go to nursing school in either Boston or some other great place. She's very excited about that.
Yeah,
She wants
she's
to.
brilliant.
She's really having a great time. It's fun watching her study medicine and come home and just babble all kinds of stuff. And science ends up getting her so many good credit points in classes because she remembers all kinds of science trivial stuff over the years. And it really works well for her.
Yeah. Well, I sure miss you at Evolve Fish. I've not been able to conduct very good business with them. The new
Yes, I
owner.
know. Well, they operate out of a Catholic church and they were the ones who ended up buying it, but they bought the Catholic church too, and they're in the process of taking it down. So that's good. Yeah.
Okay. Well, what can you do?
I'll look forward to your next thing and I'll go make a contribution right now.
All right. Thank you so much, Gary. Love to Becky and your daughter and to you.
I will. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye. Bye. Is there anyone else left that I need to say goodbye to? I don't see anyone yet. So I'll just say goodbye to everyone and thank you so much for attending. What a great time I've had with all of you. And thank you for listening to all the things I talked about. It might have been a little boring, but for some, but I really enjoyed sharing those memories with my dear friends. And I look forward to seeing everyone again. Bye-bye.
Bye, Margaret.
Thanks,
Bye.
Margaret. Bye now.
Bye, Margaret. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Thank
great job today.
you.